"Look, everyone, it's a monster." He realized, with no small amount of shock, that he wasn't dead. Just look at him now. It truly was like the king of monsters himself had appeared before them. The year was 2026, the era of the Great Beast Miracle. And this was the moment humanity discovered the full scale of the threat. It was infuriating. Their attacks couldn't even scratch the creature's defense. The first of the calamity beasts had arrived. In this life, or the next, the stakes had never been higher. He swore a silent vow that he would eventually crush them all. To his utter disbelief, he found he had returned to the time before the apocalypse. But there was a catch. He had been reborn as a monster himself. The very sky seemed to be shifting and changing above him. Suddenly, a screen appeared. The giant beast evolution system was now online. Name, Li Shu. Race, Goliath. A fitting title, all things considered. So this was the form of the Goliath race, powerful and imposing. The countdown to the first disaster was already ticking, 23 hours and 59 minutes remaining. The system urged him to evolve quickly to protect the Earth. This was his chance. With a powerful tool like this system, he finally had a real possibility of resisting the beasts. However, he was left wondering where exactly he was supposed to obtain evolution points. He looked down at his surroundings, realizing this couldn't possibly be happening. He looked at the meal provided and felt a surge of indignation. After all, he was still human inside. In his past life, he had enjoyed fine meals and delicacies, or at least things that didn't move. But now, he was being presented with a live, jumping sheep. He told himself he would rather starve. He vowed he would sooner jump off a cliff than eat it, until, well, he actually tried a bite. It turns out that for a Goliath, a little lamb is quite delicious. To be honest, his instincts were taking over. He realized that as a giant beast, nothing tasted quite as satisfying as fresh prey. We see that simply eating allows him to gain evolution points. His skills truly make him a perfect predator. His evolution points continued to grow steadily with every bite he took. The crowd watched, wondering what he was doing. The answer, of course, was quite obvious. Li Shu hadn't had his fill yet and clearly wanted more, though the onlookers found it hard to believe. They questioned if a mere lizard could truly be this intelligent and calculating. One man shouted for the others to stop staring. The Goliath King was practically ordering off a menu. A visitor offered $500 just to see another sheep released into the enclosure. Another young master joined in, eager to interact with the legendary Goliath regardless of the cost. Everyone wanted to see the beast eat, and they turned to the company commander for a decision. The commander was at a loss. This strange lizard was indeed acting as if it were placing an order. When they first found the egg in the jungle, they only intended to use it as a gimmick for tourists. They never expected the creature to grow several meters long in just a few short days. And now, it had even learned how to demand its favorite food. The commander hesitated. But with tourists willing to pay for the interaction, he decided it was best to satisfy the crowd's demands. The park quickly set up a minigame where visitors could scan a code to feed the beast in real time. The crowd grew excited. Everyone wanted to join in, drawn by the promise of something truly entertaining. Rumors spread that the Goliath was actually ordering his own meals, and naturally, everyone wanted to see the spectacle. Phones came out as people scanned the codes, one visitor immediately dropping $500 to participate. They shouted for the staff to feed Lord Goliath quickly, and the keepers were only too happy to oblige. With a successful feeding, Li Shu felt his experience points increase by 5, a perfectly timed evolution. It was working perfectly. Everything was proceeding exactly as he had calculated in his predatory mind. The crowd cheered for more, urging the staff not to stop the show just yet. As the Goliath continued to eat, the payments kept rolling in, $500 at a time. Another successful meal followed, and with it, another 5 experience points were added to his total. The spectators were treating it like a live stream, practically throwing gifts at the creature they now called Lord Goliath. On the surface, it looked like a performance, but deep down, Li Shu was simply adapting to his new reality. Money was no object for the excited crowd. They just wanted to see the great beast feast once more. The king of monsters was putting on a show, and the digital gifts continued to flood the park's account. Some wondered if they were dreaming, as the lizards seemed to have attained a human-like level of cunning. The park director realized they had hit a gold mine, having earned over $8,000 in just 10 minutes. He knew this was all thanks to the strange lizard, though calling him a strange lizard felt like an understatement. He corrected his staff, insisting they call him Lord Goliath. After all, he was now their greatest financial blessing. The director gave the order to officially change the creature's name and rebrand the entire experience immediately. They would market it as the Goliath Interactive Zoo, where the beast orders its own food, and the promotions began at once. The director ordered a live stream to be set up immediately, wanting tourists from all over the globe to feed the beast online. Understood, director. Our park is about to take off, his assistant replied, already thinking of Lord Goliath as their star. We see that Li Shu's plan was working perfectly. Human passion was proving to be a powerful tool. It was truly beyond his wildest imagination, and he found the situation quite favorable. At this rate, he calculated that by tomorrow, everything would be ready. By tomorrow, he would reach the next stage of evolution, leaving those who looked down on him in the dust. He told himself to wait, for he was destined to become their living nightmare. The next morning, the assistant hurried out, shouting that he was going to find Lord Goliath. Director, something is wrong. It's huge. Lord Goliath, he stammered, barely able to catch his breath. Outside, the crowd was screaming to see the beast, their voices so loud the director wondered if he was still dreaming. The assistant repeated that things were getting out of hand, but the director could already see the chaos for himself. It was even more exaggerated than it looked. Lord Goliath had become a sensation overnight. They had reached the #1 trending spot, and the number of tourists at the gate had already surpassed 10,000. Over a dozen media outlets were waiting for an interview, chasing this sudden, overwhelming wave of fortune. This massive surge of traffic had finally landed right on their heads, a blessing and a curse all at once. With so many people around, the director worried if Lord Goliath might suffer from stress. He was a monster, after all, and a rampage was always a possibility. But then, the assistant pointed toward the enclosure. The director froze, asking what on earth was happening, as the creature appeared to have grown significantly larger. It wasn't just his imagination. Lord Goliath had definitely grown taller since the previous evening. After consuming so much cattle and sheep yesterday, it would have been more surprising if he hadn't grown. Li Shu watched the crowd and thought that the more people who came, the better. His army of followers was finally arriving. The fans were convinced that Lord Goliath was greeting them, marveling at how human-like the creature seemed to be. One fan even declared that because the beast was being so respectful, they were willing to spend until they went bankrupt. Everything was going perfectly. The atmosphere had reached a fever pitch, exactly as Li Shu had intended. And so, we see that it was time for the real performance to begin. The crowd was stunned to see Lord Goliath dancing for his food, a sight that was, to be honest, quite surreal. The viewers urged each other to keep sending gifts, wanting to ensure the beast had the best meal possible. The assistant reported to the director that the live stream had already reached nearly 500,000 viewers. Director Lin Zhenghua could hardly believe his luck, feeling as though his ancestors were finally smiling down on him. He felt as though he had truly summoned a living god of fortune to his park. But amidst the excitement, he urged everyone to remain calm as the situation intensified. Nearby, a girl named Qingxua noticed that Kalia seemed to be on the verge of a transformation. It wasn't like the magical transformations one sees in cartoons. This felt far more grounded and dangerous. Suddenly, a voice called out for Nan Nan, breaking the tension of the moment. The urgency in the air was palpable as someone shouted for them to hurry up. Deep down, a sense of dread took hold. It seemed as though something was about to go terribly wrong. Panic began to spread through the crowd as someone screamed that the monster was going to eat them. A mother pleaded for the creature not to hurt her child, her voice filled with pure desperation. In the midst of the chaos, a small child looked at the giant beast and asked if it was hungry. With innocent bravery, the child offered their own food to the towering monster. The taste of the biscuit brought back a flood of memories for the creature. The child thanked the great beast, declaring that they were now the best of friends. The crowd began to chant for Lord Goliath, moved by what seemed to be a truly heartwarming moment. The fans were so captivated by this divine creature that they began making bold proclamations. One viewer even vowed to become Lord Goliath's exclusive feeder from that day forward. They jokingly warned others not to compete for the role, regardless of how exhausting it might be. To the crowd, this was the true king of monsters, gentle, yet undeniably powerful. One onlooker gasped, feeling as though their heart had nearly stopped from the sheer tension. As the beast began to move, the fans cried out, begging Lord Goliath not to leave just yet. The chants continued as director Lin Zhenghua tried to process the chaos unfolding before him. The director admitted to his assistant, Xiao Zhang, that he had nearly been scared out of his wits. He immediately ordered the best construction team to raise the perimeter fences to 50 meters. He demanded the use of the strongest alloys and the digging of a 10-meter deep moat for safety. Xiao Zhang promised to handle it by morning. No, he would make the call this very second. They both knew that this living god of fortune required absolute security. Nothing could be allowed to go wrong. Nearby, the young girl breathed a sigh of relief, admitting she had been terrified. And yet, she couldn't help but tell Qingxua how incredibly gentle Kalia seemed to be. It was becoming clear that he was entirely different from any other animal they had ever seen. Qingxua looked on, knowing that different was, to be honest, a massive understatement. The creature's very existence had just overturned the entire foundation of modern biology. It was becoming undeniable that a creature like this could never have evolved naturally on Earth. Lin Zhenghua immediately ordered Xiaoya to book 2 tickets to Binhai City, right now, this very second. He felt he had to see this marvel with his own eyes, no matter the cost. Meanwhile, we see the system panel opening as the LVR connection establishes itself. His current height stood at 20 meters, a respectable start, to be sure. Although his size was still a far cry from the colossal beast that reached hundreds or thousands of meters, he possessed the hexagram seal. As long as he kept eating, he knew he would grow. Strength was guaranteed, but there was a slight problem. Well, perhaps more than a slight one. Relying solely on zoo visitors to fund a daily diet of cattle and sheep was proving to be far too slow. If he could somehow contact the higher-ups of the government, things might change. He imagined eating something truly substantial. But then, he noticed something strange so late at night. Someone was coming to give him an extra meal. No, wait, the aura was different. It felt sneaky. We see two figures approaching, and one whispered, "Sister Qingxue." She worried that sneaking in like this was far too dangerous for them. What if they woke him up? Qingxue, however, had done her calculations. He had consumed a massive amount of energy today and eaten biomass far beyond the norm. She was certain that he should be in the deepest stage of his dormant period right now. Besides, she had brought a special, high-potency nerve anesthetic just in case. The dosage was enough to take down a full-grown blue crystal beast, which is no small feat. She only needed to take a small sample of his epidermal tissue for an energy reading. She told her companion to wait there, framing it as a direct command. A lovely night for a stroll, wasn't it? To be honest, she felt as though she deserved an Oscar for her performance thus far. But then, reality struck. How could his defensive power be this high? Her attempts to penetrate his skin were so ineffective they were practically a gentle massage. It seemed his natural armor was no joke, as her specialized tools simply failed to make a mark. Her plan relied on him inhaling the anesthetic at close range, provided she could reach his head. Suddenly, things took a turn. Damn it, he was awake. And here we realize that this woman is none other than the famous biologist from his past life. This was Dr. Su Qinghe. Back in those days, she was a legend. She had been hailed as the last light of hope for humanity. What were the odds of meeting her here? Actually, her arrival was perfect timing. He had been wondering how to contact the government. He needed a way to warn them that the monster invasion was imminent, and he had just unlocked the means. The great secret he carried was right here, waiting to be shared. Yes, right here. It was all contained within this moment, right here, in this very place. Everything changed right here, in the silence of the night. He decided to test the effects of his newly unlocked soul link on her. A bold choice, to be sure. She panicked, pleading with him not to eat her, her voice trembling with terror. She had no idea what he was actually doing. What could he possibly be planning? And then, we see it happen. The soul link was established. The countdown to the invasion stood at 27 hours. To succeed, he would need all the strength he could gather. He didn't need purification. He needed her to submit to him, so he could grow stronger. A monster invasion? The end of the world? To her, such things seemed utterly impossible. And yet, deep down, she couldn't deny that everything she was experiencing felt terrifyingly real. The effects of the soul link were more powerful than he imagined, though it was still quite unstable. For this first attempt, he could only transmit about 10 seconds of imagery, but that was fine. When dealing with a scientist of her caliber, 10 seconds would be more than enough. Suddenly, a voice cried out for Su Qinghe to run. It was her companion, Xiaoya. She told the girl not to be afraid, insisting she was fine and that the creature wouldn't hurt her. Xiaoya was worried sick, frantically checking her friend to see if she had been injured in the encounter. A man nearby, Director Lin, demanded to know who they were and how they dared to be so reckless. He lectured them on the dangers, noting that things could have gone horribly wrong at any moment. She introduced herself formally as Su Qinghe, the head of the National Biological Research Institute. She declared that from this moment on, the state would take custody of this creature. She required his full cooperation to facilitate her research, leaving no room for argument. And here we see the beginning of a very official and very strange collaboration. Later, she presented her findings, explaining that from a biological standpoint, this was unprecedented. Its growth rate completely defied every known law of science they had ever established. More importantly, it had communicated with her through a method resembling a spiritual soul link. The message was clear. In 27 days, colossal beasts would invade the Earth. She delivered this warning to Dr. Su, knowing that the world as they knew it was about to end. It all seemed utterly absurd. Soul links, prophecies of the end of the world, and ancient warnings. To be honest, it sounded more like a science fiction novel than a briefing for world-class scientists. They needed evidence, of course. That was the only thing that truly mattered in their world. Even if this creature was a superorganism unlike anything ever seen before, questions remained. There was no proof it was telling the truth. It could easily be a form of mental manipulation. Perhaps it was simply trying to deceive them, a possibility Su Qinghe was forced to acknowledge. She admitted it sounded incredible, but the sensation she felt in that brief moment was undeniable. That primal fear radiating from the depths of her soul was something that simply couldn't be faked. And so, she made her final judgment on the matter with absolute conviction. She concluded that the credibility of this warning was as high as 99%. They had received Dr. Su's report, but now it was time to examine a different set of data. We see the focus shift to the Mariana Trench, the deepest and most mysterious part of our oceans. There, they had collected recordings of unknown biological sounds echoing from the lightless depths. Furthermore, the latest summaries from the Geological Department over the past month were deeply concerning. The frequency of earthquakes measuring above magnitude 7 across the entire globe had shifted dramatically. It had risen by 30.7% compared to the same period last year. In regions like the Kunlun Death Valley and the Bermuda Triangle, the situation was equally strange. They had received numerous reports of inexplicable sightings that defied any logical or scientific explanation. Every sign pointed toward a single, unavoidable conclusion that no one wanted to face. Our planet was undergoing a series of unknown and terrifying mutations, and time was running out. However, since the very survival of the nation and the fate of humanity were at stake, they couldn't afford to be reckless. We see that they simply could not pin all their hopes on the prophecy of a single monster. The leader turned to the scientist and asked Dr. Su to make the necessary arrangements immediately. He intended to meet this creature personally, seeking the director's approval for such a bold move. Meanwhile, back at the sanctuary, the staff marveled at how their livestream revenue had broken yet another record. At this rate, they wouldn't just pay salaries. They could buy the land behind the mountain for a massive expansion. The money was there, but a deep worry lingered that they might not be able to protect Guzong much longer. The thought of him being taken away by experts to be sliced up for research was a constant, chilling fear. The caretaker wondered how he could ever face the creature again if he allowed such a thing to happen. Suddenly, a skeptical voice rang out, mocking the creature as the monster the people of Longwa praised so highly. To the critic, it looked like nothing more than a low-quality rubber robot, a cheap imitation of life. He claimed that only they would be foolish enough to believe in such a clumsy, stage performance. In his country, he boasted, even third-rate movies wouldn't use special effects as poor as these. The locals fired back, insisting Guzong was real and that they had seen his power with their own eyes. The skeptic laughed, asking why the high-ranking officials of Longwa weren't intervening if the creature was truly authentic. He mocked the idea of a real monster being treated like a common circus monkey for entertainment. He challenged them to make the creature appear right then and there, if it truly possessed such power. It was, in his eyes, an utterly hilarious situation, which, naturally, was a very dangerous assumption to make. The crowd grew defensive, shouting that Guzong hadn't harmed anyone and deserved to be left in peace. After all, he brought them so much joy every single day, and that was something they weren't willing to lose. A small voice cried out, pleading with the man not to bully Guzong. The man scoffed at the idea, asking how he could possibly be the one doing the bullying. After all, the difference in their size was simply too vast to ignore. Suddenly, a commanding voice ordered everyone to back away, announcing that the military was officially taking over. The officer declared that, as a representative of the state, it was his duty to ensure the safety of the people. He looked at the creature, stating that no matter how docile it acted, a wild beast would always be a beast. He vowed not to be fooled by appearances, until, in a sudden panic, he screamed for everyone to run for their lives. He feared the creature had been provoked and was about to go on a rampage, but he was wrong. We see the crowd freeze in place as someone shouted for everyone to look closely at what was happening. The officer realized that the creature possessed the power to destroy them all with ease. And yet, it chose to stay there and share in the people's joy. Beneath that monstrous exterior, he saw something unexpected, a level of wisdom and humanity that surpassed most men. He admitted his previous attack was merely a test and asked for forgiveness for his utter rudeness. It was a display of courage and vision worthy of a Longwood general. And so, the plan moved forward. We learned that the hunters they required needed to be purified before they could truly face their enemies. It turned out that everything, every unbelievable detail, was actually true. Not long after, Dr. Su Chinga arrived on the scene to take charge of the situation. From that moment on, she was appointed as the creature's exclusive liaison and primary caretaker. She was to handle its every need and report directly to the top, a mission she accepted with absolute resolve. The order was given to mobilize the nation's resources immediately, providing an unlimited supply for the task ahead. The decision was made to start a nationwide broadcast, revealing the absolute truth of the apocalypse to everyone. They wanted the entire nation, no, the entire world, to witness what was about to happen. We see the moment Longwa prepared to show the world exactly how they would raise their own guardian deity. This was no drill, and certainly no science fiction movie. The countdown had begun, with only 26 days remaining. Humanity was facing an unprecedented crisis of survival, and a desperate plea was issued to the globe. The call was for the people of the world to unite and face the end of days together. Skeptics mocked the idea, claiming Longwa had gone mad for betting a nation's fate on a zoo monster. To many outsiders, this was quite literally the most ridiculous joke they had heard all year. They laughed, wondering if the people had been brainwashed into facing the apocalypse with what looked like a rubber toy. Bets were placed that this was a self-staged hoax, a spectacle for fools, or so they believed. The critics continued their insults, confident that no amount of keyboard bravado could change the inevitable failure. But the people remained steadfast, trusting only in their country and in Guzong, leaving the doubters to their eventual tears. And then, the moment arrived. We see the state's massive delivery finally reaching Guzong. The crowd cheered for Guzong to eat his fill, knowing he would need every bit of strength to fight the monsters ahead. The zoo director, overwhelmed with emotion, called out to young Xiao Zhang to witness the sight. The state itself had come to personally oversee the feeding of their great protector. He realized his humble zoo was about to be etched into the pages of history forever. But meat alone wouldn't suffice. After all, even a guardian deity needs a balanced and nutritious diet. The citizens rallied together, organizing themselves to buy the finest fruits and vegetables for Guzong. And since Guzong would surely be thirsty, they insisted he drink only the highest quality mineral water available. One citizen pledged 100, insisting that raising Guzong shouldn't be a burden for the state alone. Everyone felt a sense of responsibility, and soon, the virtual gifts and donations began to pour in. Looking at the screen, Guzong realized these were his people. This was the nation he was meant to protect. A child called out to his mother, convinced that Guzong was thanking them and looking quite adorable while doing so. And then, a notification arrived. Congratulations were in order as his level finally rose to level 3. With this advancement, he unlocked a powerful new skill known as Atomic Breath. He felt the surge of power immediately, noting that his entire status panel had improved significantly after reaching level 3. Because his nutrition was perfectly balanced, the system granted him a bonus reward, a single random lucky draw. He couldn't help but wonder what this random draw would actually provide him. The system announced his prize, a special transformation card. The notification repeated itself, confirming that he had indeed received a transformation card. The reality sank in. He now possessed a card that allowed for a very specific change in form. It would allow him to transform into a bunny girl version of himself at a critical moment, which, to be honest, was a bit much. He questioned what kind of nonsense this was, wondering if the system, Cheeto, had some rather strange personal preferences. Meanwhile, the crowd noticed Guzong growing even larger, cheering as they saw the visible effects of their feeding efforts. This was the guardian deity of Manhwa, a protector they were raising with their own 2 hands. The people chanted his name, sensing that Guzong had become significantly stronger than before. They wondered aloud if he had learned any new tricks and begged for a demonstration. The calls grew louder for Guzong to show them exactly what he was now capable of. He decided it was only fair to let them witness the true, devastating power of his atomic breath. He knew that a demonstration would help strengthen their confidence in him even further. Suddenly, the viewers were stunned, realizing that he was actually using his power to grill meat. Some joked that they could practically smell the delicious aroma right through their screens. They wondered aloud just how much a pound of this atomic charcoal grilled meat would even cost. One viewer even claimed their keyboard was being flooded by their own drooling, which is a bit much, really. The crowd jokingly pleaded with Guzong to save at least one bite for his brothers. It was an absurd sight, using a legendary atomic breath just to prepare a meal. To be honest, Guzong certainly had a grand way of doing things, even when it came to dinner. We see him continue the process, and the crowd realized he was actually seasoning the food now. The system immediately detected that the host was consuming food infused with atomic energy. As a result, his existing skill, predatory consumption, began to undergo a sudden mutation. It upgraded into devourer of all things, allowing the host to grow stronger through total consumption. He could now absorb the special elemental energy contained within any target to reinforce his own body. With this new power, eating fire would grant fire attributes, and consuming electricity would grant lightning power. He realized that this meant his potential for evolution was now essentially limitless. Then, a memory surfaced. He remembered that before the great beast invasion in his past life, small-scale monster nests had begun breaking out all across the country. The very first outbreak within the borders of Manhwa had occurred right here in Binhai City. It was this specific nest in Binhai that unleashed the monsters known as wind wolves. They were incredibly fast with high defense, but their only weakness, as he recalled, was electricity. Everything was becoming clear. His rebirth in this specific place was no mere accident. He realized he was here to strangle the disaster at its very source before it could spread. To do that, he needed electricity, massive amounts of electrical energy, and he needed it fast. The monster nest was about to descend, and its first stop would be right here in Binhai City. Since the wind wolves were weak to lightning, he knew exactly what his next move had to be. His ally understood the gravity of the situation, promising to mobilize every scrap of electrical resources available. Meanwhile, the crowd was still focused on the food, calling out to Guzong with hungry eyes. They begged for just a single taste of that legendary roast, hoping for even a tiny morsel. One viewer even offered 100,000 credits just for a bite, which, to be honest, is quite a price for a snack. The pleas continued as they practically lined up to buy whatever he was willing to spare. They praised Guzong, calling his culinary display a magnificent, if slightly terrifying, spectacle. He decided that he couldn't simply ignore the people who had supported him this far. He ordered the meat to be sliced and distributed to the public gathered at the scene. Each person received a small piece, a gift from Guzong, though his mind remained focused on the upcoming evolution. The crowd was grateful, understanding that Guzong needed to stay fed to protect their home. They were already planning how to brag about this online, looking for the perfect headline. One suggested a title that was perhaps a bit much, even for the internet. Something along the lines of, "I just ate atomic grilled meat prepared by the legendary Guzong himself." As they took their first bites, the reactions were immediate. They could feel a strange energy surging through the meat. One man even claimed the energy was healing his old leg injury, which was a rather unexpected side effect. The man stared in disbelief, realizing that the pain in his leg had completely vanished. Even his beast, Jiansoyan, seemed revitalized, feeling a sudden surge of strength throughout its body. The officials on site were stunned by the discovery and immediately ordered the distribution to stop. They demanded that every remaining piece of roast meat be sealed and rushed to the lab at once. The urgency in the air was palpable as they scrambled to secure the remaining samples. They moved with frantic speed, their eyes fixed on the remnants of the beast known as atomic Saturn. It seemed the cooked meat possessed incredible healing and strengthening properties, a true miracle of biology. We have to wonder just how many more secrets are hidden within the body of this massive creature. This was no longer just organic matter. To the scientists, it had become a divine elixir. The scene was quickly cleared, and the meat was classified as a top-tier national security resource. It was ordered to be sent directly to the National Biolab, with strict warnings against any private hoarding. The citizens understood that Guzong's meat was now a strategic asset for the future of the Dragon Kingdom. There was a growing sense of pride among them, feeling that their nation was finally about to soar. Guzong realized that meat grilled by atomic Saturn had unexpected benefits, which worked in his favor. This development would surely make his quest for massive amounts of electrical energy much smoother. Time was running out, but his ally assured him that the matter was in capable hands. Back at headquarters, the general asked if the claims in Su Chinga's report were actually true. The confirmation was absolute. The general was told that the meat contained something truly extraordinary. It held a unique atomic activation factor, a discovery that defied conventional science. This factor could optimize human genes and repair damaged cells, changing everything we know about medicine. We see the results of a test where a volunteer with severe arthritis ate a small piece of the meat, and in less than 10 minutes, his joint pain had completely vanished. After an elite soldier was given a sample to try, his strength, speed, and reaction time were all measured. Everything had increased twofold. Yes, General, it was a total physical enhancement. This meant that the soldiers of our Dragon Kingdom would finally have the chance to become true super soldiers. The general was delighted, believing this was a sign of the nation's rising fortune. He ordered comrades Su Chinga to challenge the top 100 Special Forces members in the entire army. The plan was to form the Dragon Age Special Task Force and use the roast meat to push their potential to the absolute limit. At the same time, they would spare no expense to intensify their research on the creature, Golia. With the beast cooperation, they aimed to unlock more secrets for the benefit of the Dragon Kingdom. The officers saluted, promising to complete the mission before delivering a final report to the general. According to the warning sent by Golia, a disaster would break out in Benhai City within 3 days. A tide of beasts known as wind wolves was coming. They were weak to electricity, and Guzong needed massive power to strengthen himself. He requested that the military provide superconducting coils and 1,000-lamp grade generator sets. The general didn't hesitate, ordering the best equipment to be diverted from the national grid immediately. He commanded the transport to move at once and activated a Grade A emergency plan. The Benhai city government was notified to begin an emergency evacuation of the areas Golia had warned about. The goal was 0 civilian casualties, though many wondered why such a sudden evacuation was even necessary. It all seemed quite mysterious to the public, but this was a direct warning from Golia, and his word was now law. The citizens were certain that if Golia said it, it must be true, so they began packing their things without a second thought. They knew they had to cooperate fully, yet elsewhere in the world, people were calling out to God in disbelief. The international community wondered if the Dragon Kingdom had truly lost its mind, choosing to trust the words of a monster. To them, this massive evacuation seemed utterly foolish, almost laughable. But then there was the matter of the roast meat. The idea that monster meat could actually cure diseases was something the world found hard to swallow. Many claimed it was just a gimmick cooked up by the Dragon Kingdom to keep the peace before an inevitable invasion. Critics mocked them, suggesting their economy was collapsing, clearly showing they had no idea what a true guardian deity was. To our people, Golia was a divine beast, a protector that the rest of the world simply couldn't understand. It was as if they were mocking someone's faith. They were bitter, and they were letting that bitterness show. But the warning was clear. When the beasts come to tear their homes apart, they shouldn't come crying to Golia for help. Meanwhile, the buffet of electrical energy had arrived, and the wind wolves were closing in. We see Golia preparing himself, ready to welcome these invaders with a thunderous reception. We have to wonder what Golia is planning. Is he really going to dismantle them like a giant machine? The equipment being set up looked like it held enough power to light up an entire province. It seemed Golia was willing to endure the strain as the military finally activated the massive devices. They cranked the power up to full capacity, pushing the limits of the machinery. Golia felt the surge. It was a painful sensation, but in this world, pain often precedes a breakthrough. He knew that the more intense the agony, the greater the power he would ultimately wield. And then, as if the heavens themselves had opened up, the sound of thunder shook the very earth. We see that it wasn't just a simple storm. It was Golia himself who was calling down the thunder. As he absorbed the ultra-high voltage energy, he successfully unlocked a new set of electrical skills. He gained the devastating super electronic cannon and a passive resistance to high-level electrical energy. He continued to feast on the electricity, drawing in every spark of the high-voltage current. The process was a success, fully integrating the super electronic cannon into his growing arsenal. His body adapted further, solidifying his high-level resistance to the very energy he was consuming. He devoured the energy and high-powered matter, feeling his strength swell with every surge. His experience points jumped by 3,000, which was bad news for the Wind Wolves, who were clearly driven mad. Their grandfather Golia had prepared a special electrotherapy treatment just for them, and it wasn't going to be pleasant. Meanwhile, the military reported that the meat Golia had roasted had successfully created 100 super soldiers. Their physical capabilities had been doubled across the board, turning them into something beyond human. On behalf of the Dragon Kingdom, the commander pleaded with Golia for his continued cooperation. He hoped to use Golia's unique gifts to conduct even deeper research into human potential. The goal was to cultivate even stronger warriors, as Golia realized his power could directly bolster the nation's soldiers. He understood that strengthening the army was far more efficient than simply fighting every battle himself. It was a logical conclusion, really, even for a giant beast of his stature. Golia allowed them to take what they needed, and the commander thanked him with profound respect. He promised to take the samples back for immediate study, sensing a turning point for their people. He had a strong premonition that this new batch of roasted meat would provide the Dragon Kingdom with something vital. It was poised to bring about a massive, unprecedented transformation that would change their world forever. We see that the Dragon Kingdom's actions were becoming increasingly absurd in the eyes of the world, especially regarding that future monster. They had actually put the entire nation into a state of combat readiness, a move that left many neighbors skeptical. And as for this talk of a windwolf nest, most dismissed it as nothing more than a complete fairy tale. Critics assumed they were just flexing their muscles, but predicted they would soon become an international laughingstock. Meanwhile, in another nation, a technician informed the minister that global underground activity was showing highly unusual patterns. According to their latest models, both their country and Country J were expected to experience earthquakes in the coming days. The minister, however, was unimpressed, asking what there was to be so alarmed about regarding a simple earthquake. Earthquakes happen every year, after all, and he saw no reason to panic just because the Dragon Kingdom was talking nonsense. He felt they shouldn't have to change their entire way of life based on such rumors. But the technician insisted that the frequency and energy readings were far from normal. The data matched the Dragon Kingdom's intelligence perfectly, suggesting they needed to raise their alert level immediately. The minister snapped, asking if the man was trying to shake the army's morale with such talk. He even accused him of being bought off, while the technician could only argue that he was following the scientific data. The minister simply ordered him to get out, refusing to hear another word on the matter. He decided to wait until the predicted date of the nest passed, just to see how the Dragon Kingdom would handle the embarrassment. In fact, he had already prepared the champagne for the occasion. He was ready to toast to what he perceived as the Dragon Kingdom's utter stupidity. Back in the Dragon Kingdom, some officials worried about what would happen if the Wind Wolves never actually appeared. They feared that if nothing happened, the entire world would continue to watch them as if they were a joke. Yet, they reminded themselves that their duty was to be ready for that one-in-a-million danger should it truly arrive. Their goal was simple: to become the strongest shield standing between the people and the coming storm. Orders were barked out for all personnel to maintain the highest state of alert, and the response was immediate. Somewhere else, a skeptic tried to convince himself it was all just an illusion, cursing under his breath. But the tremors were real, and the sensation of impending doom was only growing stronger by the second. We see the confusion as people began to wonder exactly what these things emerging from the earth were. It was a nightmare scenario. No one expected them to simply burst out from beneath the ground like that. Massive fissures began to tear through the streets of cities all across the country. It wasn't just local, either. Large-scale ground cracks were appearing simultaneously in Europe, South America, and across the globe. The world was in shock, left wondering how something so catastrophic could be happening so suddenly. Many had assumed the beast tide would be confined to the Dragon Kingdom, but they were deathly wrong. People scrambled to find the Dragon Kingdom's live broadcast, desperate for any shred of information. They were certain that if they looked, they would see the Dragon Kingdom in the same state of ruin. In a fit of panic, commanders ordered their troops to open fire, convinced that everyone was already doomed. But as the smoke cleared, the reality of the situation began to sink in. It seemed impossible. Why? They wondered. Were the people of the Dragon Kingdom the only ones who were actually prepared? And then, the true threat revealed itself. The Wind Wolf Kings had arrived. It was a terrifying sight. They were actually facing the legendary Wind Wolf Kings in the flesh. To the rest of the world, this made no sense, and to be honest, it felt fundamentally unfair. They couldn't understand why only one nation had been ready, and they knew exactly what this meant for their reputation. Now, instead of the Dragon Kingdom, it was the rest of the world that would become a global laughingstock. Our story continues as the vanguard of the Wind Wolf clan made his terrifying presence known. To him, humans were such pathetic, fragile creatures that the very idea of them resisting was an insult. He called out to his pack, telling his children to find the resistance and crush it wherever it hid. With a savage howl, he commanded his followers to charge alongside him into the fray. His only desire in that moment was to see the human defenders torn to pieces. He wanted to demonstrate the absolute, overwhelming power that the Wind Wolf clan possessed. Slaughtering such weak beings would be, in his estimation, a perfectly effortless task. As he lunged forward, onlookers held their breath, wondering how the soldiers could possibly survive this. They expected to see the Dragon Kingdom soldiers shredded, but then, something truly bizarre happened. The feed suddenly cut to black. The power had failed at the most dramatic moment possible. Imagine the confusion on the battlefield as a voice cried out, asking what kind of monster they were facing. It seemed physically impossible for a human body to reach such a terrifying level of strength. We see the disbelief in their eyes as they began to wonder if these defenders were even human anymore. A little later, a voice filled with grim satisfaction noted that things were going exactly as planned. It turned out that Jiria's electromagnetic cannons were far more effective than anyone had dared to imagine. Every single one of their super soldiers had just seen their physical capabilities increase fivefold. Their bodies were transforming, becoming something capable of standing toe-to-toe with the monsters. Their physical forms had reached a peak that defied every known law of biology. They had become the ultimate super warriors, specifically bred to hunt the beasts of the tide. Yes, General, an aide remarked. It seems our absolute faith in this project has finally been rewarded. Expert Su reported that the Wind Wolf leader had finally appeared, and he immediately ordered Jiria to lock onto the target. It seemed the great Godzilla had grown quite impatient waiting, but they had finally managed to hook a very big fish. With the stage set, it was time to officially invite the Titan to step out from his seclusion. The wolf leader watched in shock as Jiria emerged, realizing the beast had been lying in wait beneath the waves all along. He told himself it was impossible for a planet as barren and primitive as Earth to hide such a secret. He couldn't fathom how a creature more powerful than himself could possibly have been born in this place. Deep down, he was certain this was nothing more than a bluff, an elaborate trick to scare him off. To the onlookers, it looked like a clash of monsters, but they soon realized their guardian deity had come to save them. We see the soldiers cheering as their protector began to thrash the invaders, shouting for the mighty Godzilla to show his strength. The wolf leader sneered, dismissing his opponent as nothing more than a thick-skinned, clumsy fool. He mocked the Titan's slow speed, promising to slowly wear him down until there was nothing left. He boasted of his infinite self-healing abilities, truly believing himself to be an immortal god of the battlefield. In his arrogance, he questioned how a mere beast could ever hope to compete with a being like him. But then, the Titan finally caught him, and the wolf's arrogant taunts turned into a sudden, sharp cry of pain. It was quite a surprise, really, as he felt his very bones and essence being crushed by an overwhelming force. He struggled to understand how this creature possessed a power that defied all his previous logic. It was a strength capable of completely bypassing his most prized regenerative abilities. Trembling, he spat out a final threat, telling the Titan to wait and see what was coming next. He warned that this was not enough, for the great devourer was already on his way. Our world was about to face a descent, a darkness that would soon fall upon the entire Earth. Everything on this planet, he claimed, would soon become nothing more than food for his master. He asked mockingly if this so-called devourer had shared these grand visions in a dream. But for the wolf, an eternal fate was already sealed, and we see the system congratulate our host. By devouring the Wind Wolf leader, Jin Yinji, he gained a staggering 10,000 points. His level rose to 4, and with it, he unlocked a brand new skill for his growing arsenal. It was the Universal Electronic Field, a power that promised to change the battlefield entirely. The cheers erupted instantly. They had won, the battle was over, and the victory was theirs. The cries of triumph echoed through the ranks as they realized they had actually survived. Long live the Dragon Kingdom, they shouted, their voices filled with newfound hope and pride. He felt the Titan's gaze upon him and decided that these spoils should be shared with the men. The orders were given to the entire unit. This roasted beast was to be a reward for their bravery. He told his brothers not to be shy and to eat as much as their stomachs could possibly hold. It was time to eat, and they thanked Comrade Situ as the feast was finally served. The aroma was incredible. Apparently, this is what meat roasted by an electromagnetic pulse tastes like. After eating, they felt their strength surging, finding this meat far more potent than the last batch. To be honest, the scent alone was enough to make anyone lose their senses. Since the commanders had spoken, the civilians wondered if they might get a taste of the prize as well. One called the other a fool, noting that the remains of the monsters were scattered everywhere. The rest of the world watched in disbelief as the people of the Dragon Kingdom threw a massive barbecue. They were actually eating the alien beasts, a concept that only made sense within the Dragon Kingdom. In their eyes, every living creature on this planet fell into only two categories, the edible and the inedible. The sight was enough to bring tears to one's eyes, with many begging the state to open a purchase link for monster meat. The leaders watched the screens in disbelief, witnessing exactly what the people of the Dragon Kingdom were doing. They realized, with growing dread, that they could no longer suppress the rising fury of their own citizens. An explanation had to be given. A scapegoat was needed to satisfy the restless masses. The leader stepped forward, pleading with his compatriots to remain calm during this chaotic time. He claimed they hadn't actually been defeated. Rather, it was the Dragon Kingdom that was at fault. According to him, they had been misled by the Dragon Kingdom's despicable and underhanded tactics. The narrative shifted quickly, convincing the public that the Dragon Kingdom was indeed the one pulling the strings. After all, their own military had prepared for so long. Surely they couldn't have failed on their own. The plan was simple: shift all responsibility to the Dragon Kingdom for deliberately misleading them. They claimed that vital intelligence regarding the first wave of attacks had been intentionally withheld. The massive losses caused by this initial strike were now being reframed for the public eye. It wasn't a failure of leadership, they argued, but a result of the grave errors in the Dragon Kingdom's reports. He urged everyone to stand united, masking his own incompetence behind a call for national solidarity. The Prime Minister agreed, noting that internal strife would only lead them toward a faster destruction. Deciding it wasn't the time for infighting, they demanded that the Dragon Kingdom provide a formal explanation. He scoffed privately, thinking about how easily the common people could be manipulated by a few choice words. Next, they planned a trip to the Dragon Kingdom, just as a soldier arrived to deliver an urgent report. Delegations from the United States and other nations had arrived to discuss the escalating global crisis. Negotiations? He scoffed, knowing exactly what was really on their minds. It was obvious to everyone. General Zhao, they began, the reason we have come today is to discuss a potential collaboration regarding the current crisis with the Dragon Kingdom. Oh, Zhao replied, what a coincidence. It happens to be exactly time for dinner. They claimed to have long admired the profound and vast culinary culture of the Dragon Kingdom. For instance, that famous Gusong monster barbecue we've heard so much about. We must certainly have a taste of it today, one added with a hopeful cough. So, you two came all this way just for a meal? You should have said so. Guards, serve the food. Meanwhile, they secretly believed the Dragon Kingdom would soon be beneath their feet. General Zhao, is this truly how you treat your guests? They asked, looking at the table. We have traveled a very long distance, and this seems a bit lacking, wouldn't you say? You don't understand, Zhao explained calmly. These are extraordinary times we are living in. Our entire nation is tightening its belt and cutting back on every possible luxury. Everything is being sacrificed to support our guardian, Gusong. Now, let's be direct, General Zhao. There's no need for secrets between us, they said. What we truly want is some of that meat. We want the meat from those mad wolves. It is for the sake of all humanity, of course. In exchange, we can offer our most advanced technology. An exchange? How convenient. And where was this technology when you were mocking us for supporting Gusong in the beginning? Now, Gusong is the great guardian that the people of the Dragon Kingdom have raised, bite by bite. Tell me, what right do you have to come here now and demand a piece of the prize? Well said. Why should we give them anything after they spent so much time mocking us? It was truly laughable, the sheer nerve it took for them to come here acting so entitled. Fortunately, we have Gusong on our side. Long live the mighty Gusong. The Dragon Kingdom was being pushed to its limits, facing what felt like a crisis for all humanity. Even so, we find ourselves eating barbecue and watching the drama unfold. It's quite a joyful scene. This is incredible, Sister Qingshui. The mad wolf meat roasted by the electromagnetic atomic cannon is 10 times more effective than if it were cooked by ordinary flames. This proves something vital. Goliath's atomic dragon isn't just a weapon. It acts as a powerful catalyst. It maximizes the energy within the raw flesh. Lingshan Wang realized the weight of this. At the cost of Lingshan Wang's efforts, we have secured a super evolution for our soldiers. It's nothing short of a miracle, and to be honest, it's all thanks to Gusong's blessing. We must ensure we are worthy of the sacrifices he has made. That much is certain, and so, we must also do everything in our power to protect him. Name, Uncle Lin. Race, Goliath. Level, 4. Height, 100 meters. Weight, 200 tons. Ability, all things. Current experience points, 25,300. Countdown to the first Great Beast Invasion, 19 days, 15 hours, and 3 minutes. He had finally reached level 4, feeling his strength grow significantly once again. But that countdown, it felt like a constant, looming pressure hanging over his head. Ding! The system detects that the host has successfully eliminated a colony of low-level exotic beasts. A new function had been unlocked, the Universal Beast Survey. And here we see it, the complete data on every exotic beast destined to invade in the future. Their weaknesses, the timing of their arrival, and their exact locations were all laid out perfectly. To be honest, this was an incredible advantage. With this information in hand, he could prepare his defenses in advance and take them down one by one. Deep down, he knew the Dragon Kingdom was saved, and perhaps the entire Earth as well. It was a moment of pure, overwhelming relief. Sister Qingshui watched him, wondering what was happening to Gusong. She didn't have an answer, but she could sense it. He seemed genuinely happy. Looking at that massive body, it felt as though something familiar lived within. as if a vibrant human soul were truly residing inside that giant frame. Gusong, stop rolling around, she called out. I've brought a surprise for you. A surprise? She signaled for it to come forward. The sight was staggering. No one could have guessed the Dragon Kingdom possessed such a massive machine. Foreign observers were left cursing in disbelief. They couldn't fathom how the local technology had reached such a level, wondering what their own intelligence departments had been doing. Gusong braced himself, wondering if he had to fight this thing. Gusong, she shouted. Seeing you rolling on the ground like that, your back must be incredibly itchy. We can't scratch it for you ourselves, so we brought him to do the job instead. Wait, what? A 100-meter-tall robot, acting as a bathhouse attendant? And so, the first phase of the guardian deity's cleaning and care routine officially began. The back-scrubbing service was initiated, and the water started to flow. As the water washed over Gusong, he looked absolutely comfortable, perhaps a bit too comfortable. To be honest, the observers watching this couldn't believe their eyes. They were using high-pressure water cannons and a spiked mace just to scrub his back. It was a truly bizarre sight for the end of the world. Who could have imagined such a thing? The impact of this scene was stronger than a beast tide, while the world was defending against monsters. The Dragon Kingdom was busy giving their monster a luxury bath. We see it on Gusong's face, an expression of pure, heavenly bliss. He looked exactly like a tired worker getting a foot massage after a long shift. It was a disgrace. At least, that's how the foreign generals saw it. A massive disgrace while they studied how to fight. But as the general noted, the Dragon Kingdom wasn't just bathing him. There was something far more terrifying. They didn't just have Gusong. They possessed mecha technology of this incredible caliber. Their intelligence departments felt like complete failures, especially seeing the effects of the Gusong barbecue. That meat allowed the soldiers' strength to grow exponentially. As one side rose, the other fell. Our story shows that the global advantage was being rapidly eroded by these developments. The foreign commander, Gaia, decided they could no longer sit idly by and watch. The mecha, the super soldiers, all of it was becoming a threat to his vision. He believed these advancements should belong to his own Germanic people instead. Commander, please give the order, his subordinates urged, ready for whatever came next. The Ghost Squad was already prepared to teach a lesson, having successfully infiltrated the Dragon Kingdom's biological laboratory. Their mission was simple: bring back a biological sample and all the data, and they were told to remember one thing. For the glory of the Empire, they were to succeed at any cost, a heavy burden to carry, indeed. Having already breached the outer defenses, they found the Dragon Kingdom's security system to be surprisingly fragile. They mocked the idea of anyone standing against the Ghost Squad. It seemed almost laughable to them. Despite their confidence, they reminded each other to stay vigilant as they moved deeper into the facility. Following the plan, they began their silent infiltration toward the core database of Sector A. Meanwhile, a lone guard decided it was time for a 5-minute break to enjoy his late-night meal. Seeing him, the squad dismissed him as just a low-ranking soldier and moved in to eliminate him quickly. But the soldier simply looked up and asked what they were doing, skipping sleep just to play at sneak attacks. The invaders were horrified, stammering as they asked what kind of monster he was, since their exoskeleton armor was top tier. It was designed to withstand 10 tons of force, yet it seemed utterly useless in this moment. The soldier smiled and welcomed them to the Dragon Kingdom's special brand of hospitality. He had been waiting for these rats to show up, telling them to go back and warn their masters. The Dragon Kingdom does not seek war, he explained, but they certainly do not fear it either. They prefer to mind their own business, but if anyone dares to reach out a claw toward them, that claw will be severed. Shortly after, a young woman approached, calling out to her brother. She asked what their next move should be, as the focus shifted toward the impending threat on the horizon. In 7 days, the coastal dragon turtle was predicted to make landfall at Binhai City. This coastal dragon turtle stands 120 meters tall, protected by a massive suit of biological ice crystal armor. We can only imagine how strong its defenses must be, but what is even more terrifying is what follows. The massive army of dragon turtles he leads would, after just one battle, become a global catastrophe. To deal with this coastal dragon turtle, one thing is certain. They must obtain the ultimate armor-piercing capability. Armor-piercing, indeed. He considered 2 methods, one being instantaneous high-explosive damage, and the other being continuous physical drilling. Yes, that was the plan. Timed explosions and drill-based penetration. He turned to the general. They had to take a 2-pronged approach, and the orders were issued immediately. He commanded the mobilization of the nation's entire strategic reserve of TNT explosives. Furthermore, he ordered their most powerful shield tunneling machine, the Earth Drilling Dragon, along with all carbon drilling machinery, to be transported to the site. All of them, General. The general hesitated, noting these were vital assets, but the reply was firm. This was a supreme directive. For the survival of the Dragon Kingdom, they would pay any price necessary. And so, the Dragon Kingdom announced the news of the beast invasion once again. In 7 days, the giant dragon turtle would emerge from the seabed to destroy the human world. While the nation was actively preparing for the confrontation, others outside dismissed it as mere alarmism. But deep down, they knew better. They couldn't remain unprepared. If others could deploy Goliaths, they could too. However, his subordinates pointed out the obvious. They didn't actually have any Goliaths. Then they would simply build their own, mobilizing every resource and every soul available. Tigers and warhorses can be raised with a handful of meat, but we must create something far greater. We need to forge a strength that belongs solely to our great nation. Gentlemen, listen closely. The lives of ordinary people are of no concern to us, not in the slightest. We must immediately launch the Noah Wind Pearl project to begin screening our elites. Our noble bloodline must be preserved at all costs. As for the common masses, well, they can simply pray to God for salvation. Do you see it now? This is what true technology looks like. The Crimson Typhoon, the Gypsy Danger, and the Striker Eureka. These are the tools of the future. While the people of the Dragon Kingdom are still playing with primitive defenses, we have already entered the age of the mecha. In 7 days' time, the entire world will see who the true savior really is. Yes, they certainly will. Gazoo, it is time. Today's buffet consists of 2 very special options, the Soul Blade set and the Armor Piercing set. He looked at his brother. Come now, for the sake of our nation and our very survival, you must evolve. But suddenly, things took a turn. He was losing control. Run, someone help. Help me. The screams echoed as the situation spiraled out of hand. They were nothing more than a group of clowns, and they would soon understand what true power is. Real strength comes from the determination to protect, not from the instinct to plunder. General, the national strategic reserves have been completely exhausted. Goliath's evolution, unfortunately, has stalled at the most critical step. It was so close, yet so far. 5 days have passed, and the Dragon Kingdom's giant hand is still glowing. We might suspect, to be honest, that he simply ate too much and has indigestion. This so-called evolution is quite possibly the biggest joke of the century. The idea of land creatures daring to challenge the overlords of the deep sea. Well, the Dragon Kingdom is clearly dreaming. We see now that a true savior never relies on ancient myths or desperate fantasies, but on cold steel and heavy artillery. It really is laughable, isn't it? What exactly is his plan? He seems to think this is some sort of cartoon. The Dragon Kingdom has overplayed its hand this time. They can wait to be submerged. Our Mangwa mechas are far more reliable. They represent the true hope of humanity. He is our guardian deity. Brother, his evolution requires assistance immediately. He needs more energy. He needs the celestial bodies to repay Gazoo's kindness. They all cried out to repay Gazoo's kindness together. Gazoo, it is time to eat. The moment has finally arrived. Deep down, he knew these were the very people he had sworn to protect. This was his nation, and this was Gazoo. The stakes couldn't be higher. The hopes of the entire nation are gathered right here. Let the feast begin. It worked. Gazoo has actually succeeded against all odds. It was a magnificent sight. The fresh sea dragon turtle had finally emerged. He took a deep breath and told himself that he was finally ready. Fenglang, that useless creature, is dead, a cold voice declares. He tells Xiaolin that land creatures are pathetic and weak, and that Fenglang's failure is a mark of shame. We see now that their era has finally arrived. Mansui and the others are ordered to occupy the continent and gather every tribe. They are to follow him and cleanse this world once and for all. Suddenly, Jingxian receives an emergency alert. Across multiple coastlines around the globe, giant creature signals are detected simultaneously. They are beginning their landing. To their horror, they realize the creature's defenses are completely unbreakable. Meanwhile, Noah's Ark boasts the most advanced divine technology available. As long as it dives deep into the ocean, Noah's Ark can withstand any disaster, including these lowly monsters. Yes, quite optimistic. But then, a chilling realization hits. He has already found them. It is time for the savior of 9 generations to make his grand entrance. The crowd is ecstatic, claiming this is the true light of humanity, and it looks impressive. Mechas are the absolute peak, they say, while that creature from the Dragon Kingdom is still just standing dazed by the shore. We see the contrast clearly. This is the power of technology they boast. The so-called gods of old are nothing more than a joke when standing before these steel giants. General, something else has appeared in the sea, a soldier reports urgently. They chant about the power of technology, seemingly convinced of their own invincibility. They continue to chant about the power of technology, but something new is stirring in the sea. Another signal has just appeared on the radar, and its massive size is easily 10 times that of the dragon turtles they were just facing. 10 times. Imagine that. The commander can only gasp in disbelief, unable to process what he is seeing. This isn't just another creature. This is a true monster, a nightmare from the depths. The order is given to retreat immediately, hoping to preserve at least a few survivors for the future. The massive entity mocks them, asking if these glowing toys really think they can run away. To be honest, the creature sounds disappointed, claiming it hasn't even begun to have its fun yet. A wave of despair washes over the crew as they realize humanity might truly be finished. But one soldier refuses to give up, insisting there is still hope if they head toward the Dragon Kingdom. His superior calls him insane, screaming for him to come back before it's too late. It is a direct order. A proud warrior of their nation should never stoop to asking the Dragon Kingdom for help. The soldier doesn't care about pride anymore. He only cares about survival, and he's willing to do anything. And then, we see that the moment everyone has been waiting for has finally arrived. Desperate cries for help fill the air as the survivors reach out to their only remaining hope. They beg for salvation, their voices trembling with the raw fear of the end. A calm voice cuts through the chaos, declaring that the game has officially come to an end. The command is given to open fire and save as many people as possible from the carnage. The monster looks on in amusement, seeing nothing but a deer, a mere beast of the earth. It finds it laughable that such a creature would choose to side with these weak and pathetic humans. It finds the entire situation utterly laughable, a display of pure arrogance. If it had stayed hidden in a trench 10,000 meters deep, perhaps there would be no way to reach it. But it made a fatal mistake by coming ashore. Now, the situation has changed entirely. It has stepped onto land where it simply does not belong, and for that, there will be consequences. The order is clear. This creature must die for the sake of Manhwa. This is what true national responsibility looks like when facing a global catastrophe. Humanity must stand united, and Manhwa has shown the way, unlike the hesitation of Gilia. They must win, for they are now the final hope for all of mankind. The challenge is issued directly to the beast. To the defenders, it is nothing more than a lizard that shouldn't even be allowed to touch the sea. It seems the monster cannot even manage to break through their primary defenses. An atomic breath collides with a violent explosion, lighting up the entire horizon. We see the tide turning as the human defenses hold firm against the impossible. The defense is holding. It is an incredible, almost unbelievable sight to behold. This, as it turns out, is the true power required to face a king of monsters. Suddenly, the command goes out to all the creatures' swarms to abandon their current targets. They are ordered to converge on Manhwa immediately, without a moment's delay. The beast intends to level this entire place to the ground, leaving nothing behind. The entire monstrous horde begins to gather, focusing all their fury on Manhwa. And then, to everyone's shock, the creatures begin to retreat from the other fronts. Wait, what exactly is happening? Where could they all be going? Our satellites have managed to track their movements, and the data is startling. Every single one of them is heading straight for the eastern coast of Manhwa. It's hard to believe, but every dragon turtle is converging on Manhwa at once. Are they planning to besiege Gilia? No matter how strong Gilia is, he can't fight off this many monsters. He is bearing the weight of all humanity on his shoulders. Manhwa is our final shield. Gilia, we can only pray that you find a way to hold the line. Do you see this, My subjects have finally arrived to finish this. No matter how powerful you think you are, they will bury you under sheer numbers. Nianzue looked on, but he didn't seem particularly worried about the incoming horde. In fact, he was just wondering how to level up quickly when this gift-wrapped experience arrived. It was, to be perfectly honest, a rather generous reception. He activated the universal electromagnetic field, instantly paralyzing everything in its reach. And then, the atomic raid began, a devastating blast of ferroelectric detonation. The smell was actually quite pleasant, a bit like roasted lamb, though perhaps a little tough. A notification chimed. He had successfully cleared the Ice Chariot Dragon Turtles. His sword value increased by 3,000 points in a single, glorious stroke. General, I think I smell something delicious. Is that actually food? Suddenly, the soldiers realized they were hungry, and they weren't about to let that scent escape. To be fair, these monsters smelled surprisingly appetizing once they were properly cooked. We see the world wondering, what exactly does dragon turtle meat taste like? Are there any food critics who can analyze this? Nianzue's opponent roared in fury, calling him a cursed monster and swearing to see him dead. The enemy unleashed his ultimate move, absolute solidification, followed by the sea god spear. The air itself seemed to freeze under the weight of the absolute solidification technique. Nianzue, however, found the attempt to use ice and fire against him to be utterly foolish. The attacker was in disbelief, unable to comprehend how his absolute solidification could fail. He wondered how it could be ineffective, but playing with ice in front of the sun is a losing game. Nianzue asked if he didn't find it ridiculous. Since he couldn't win, there was no point in continuing. And so, he simply went back to eating, devouring a pair of dragon turtles, and gaining 37 sword points. The enemy cried out in despair for his subjects, while Nianzue simply noted how delicious they were. It was truly tasty, and he told his foe not to misunderstand. He was perfectly capable of eating more. He turned his attention to the next one, mocking their hesitation to join the feast. It was quite a sight. He was using the advantage of the terrain to slowly wear his opponent down. The command went out to all artillery units. Stop attacking the coastal dragon turtles and focus fire elsewhere. Their new priority was clear. They had to provide cover for Gilia at all costs. Frustrated at being unable to catch him, the enemy decided to crush the insects instead. He vowed to take everything that Nianzue sought to protect and turn it all into dust right before his very eyes. The order was given to open fire and stop him, no matter the consequence. Cries of desperation rang out, pleading for everyone to run before it was too late. But as it turned out, outrunning the first Air Force apostle, the twin dragon turtle, was an impossible task. The experience points began to flood in, 100, then 100,000, doubling instantly. With another 100,000 points, the host's attack level surged upward once again. His current level was rising rapidly, now exceeding 200 million points. Suddenly, a massive genetic optimization was detected within the host's twin dragon turtle apostles. This unlocked a golden intelligence, a power that would surely bolster the twin dragon turtle's strength. Nianzue looked at his foe, noting that trying to harm his people right in front of him was a bold choice. It was, to be perfectly honest, a death wish. The enemy trembled in shock, unable to comprehend the sheer scale of the power radiating from him. Nianzue decided it was time for his opponent to get a true taste of his own strength. He made a declaration for all to hear. Everything hidden and stored upon this planet was under his watch. The dragons would be protected by him, and him alone. Indeed, this entire planet was now under his personal protection. And for anyone daring enough to cross that line, only death awaited them. We see the realization dawning on the crowd. He had become the guardian of their own guardian deity. Giulio was no longer seen as a mere monster, but as the protector of all humanity. He had won. He had actually done it. The sheer scale of his strength was almost terrifying to behold. The people felt a surge of hope, believing that with him there, they might actually survive. But then, something else began to approach, something that viewed humans as nothing more than weaklings. Yet, sensing his unique aura, the newcomer immediately began to beg the great master for mercy. The creature immediately began to plead for its life, claiming it had no ill intentions toward him. Surprised that the beast could speak, Nianzue demanded to know exactly who, or what, it was. Trembling, the creature introduced itself as Xiaoba, its voice shaking with genuine fear. It went on to explain that it was, in fact, a devoted admirer of Nianzue's overwhelming power. Xiaoba insisted they were on the same side, both being native inhabitants of the earth. A native of Earth? Nianzue told the creature to explain itself more clearly. He wasn't about to let such a strange claim slide without a full explanation. Xiaoba revealed that Earth had always been home to many ancient, monstrous beasts. They had lived here for millions of years, but because human activity became so frequent, they chose to hide away and avoid contact, a revelation that finally made things click for Nianzue. He realized then that the mother of his current body was likely one of these native giant beasts. Xiaoba then asked if he truly believed these invading monsters had simply appeared out of thin air. They hadn't. They were actually alien beasts from beyond the stars. Long before the birth of humanity, they had arrived on Earth via a massive meteorite. They were the ones who wiped out the dinosaurs and countless other species, a fact that stunned Nianzue. So, it wasn't a natural disaster that killed the dinosaurs, but these extraterrestrial monsters. However, the ancestors of the native beasts refused to surrender and fought back with everything they had. In the end, they were successful in their desperate struggle to protect the planet. They managed to seal all of those alien invaders away deep beneath the surface. Which, naturally, leads to the obvious question, why are they all starting to reappear now? It was all because of humanity, specifically, their excessive destruction of the natural world. Their actions left the Earth riddled with scars and deep wounds. This damage caused the ancient seals from hundreds of millions of years ago to finally crack. These cracks gave the alien beasts the perfect opportunity to escape, as Xiaoba addressed him as Lord Goliath. We learn that there are still other native beasts like Xiaoba lurking across the globe. The creature pleaded for Nianzue to lead them in the fight against these extraterrestrial invaders. It was the only way, it claimed, to truly protect their shared home once and for all. Otherwise, the Earth would be completely devoured by them, the creature warned the armored man. While many native beasts didn't trust humans, Xiaoba insisted that Nianzue was different. He was their only hope. If he stepped forward, he could surely unite them. Nianzue realized the creature already had a specific target in mind for this recruitment. Xiaoba confirmed this, revealing the target was none other than its own mother. She was known as the Mother of Divine Malice, slumbering in the deepest parts of the Chromatic Trench. She was described as the oldest living being of their kind still in existence. And, naturally, she was also one of the most powerful native beasts on the planet. The Mother of Divine Malice, a name that carried a heavy, ancient weight. A little later, we see another creature, Kalamo, calling out to its mother about the chaos in the world. He warned that the alien beasts were devouring everything and they could no longer afford to wait. The mother, Kalamo, replied that she could sense everything happening above. She could feel the human cities burning and hear the earth itself crying out in pain. Kalamo asked why they weren't acting yet, insisting that with just one word from her, he could go and gather all their hidden kin to face those extraterrestrial scumbags. In a final, desperate battle to the death, his mother countered with a cold question, on what authority would he gather them? She wondered if the sorrowful Jormungandr would truly listen to his call, or if the berserk titan of the Forest of Death would ever choose to obey him. They had lived in isolation for eons, after all, acknowledging no master but themselves. Kalamo cried out, asking if they were really just going to watch their home be destroyed. She replied that unless a guardian appeared, one who possessed absolute, undeniable power, there would be no hope for a unified front. Without a leader capable of making the strongest submit, she believed, this perilous war would lead only to a dead end for their kind. The earth was destined to perish, she lamented, but then, Xiaoba suddenly arrived. Xiaoba announced to his mother that the leader she spoke of was right before her eyes. He declared with pride that he had returned with reinforcements. The mother of divine malice stirred, demanding to know who had dared to enter her domain. Nianzue observed her, noting that this ancient native beast truly possessed an overwhelming aura. Addressing her as the mother of the abyss, he told her he too heard the earth's wailing. He claimed to feel her despair as well, which caused the massive creature to pause. She realized then that he was the giant beast who had defeated the deep-sea dragon turtle. Nianzue addressed her directly, stating that he had come to Golia for one reason and one reason only. He intended to unite all native beasts and finally declare war against the invaders from beyond the stars. He didn't just bring his own strength to the table. He brought the support of the surface's most intelligent race. With the backing of humanity, he promised they would protect this planet together. Kalama was incredulous, questioning how his mother could possibly trust humans or this stranger. He demanded to know why she would place her faith in a young fellow who had appeared out of nowhere. After all, he had lived for 10,000 years and considered himself the strongest warrior there was. If this newcomer wanted to be a leader, he would first have to get past Kalama. And so, with a surge of pride, the beast issued a formal challenge. Nianzue simply noted that since he was feeling a bit hungry, this challenge was actually quite timely. He decided it was time to show the hot-headed warrior the meaning of absolute power. To Nianzue, the entire display was nothing short of laughable. Kalama gasped in shock, unable to comprehend how anyone could possess such overwhelming strength. He struggled desperately, shouting for the giant to let him go. Nianzue remarked that the warrior tasted quite good, very chewy. In fact, he dared him to continue the fight, but Golia finally intervened, telling Kalama that enough was enough. She told her son plainly that he had lost, leaving him stammering in disbelief and frustration. Golia admitted that while she now recognized Nianzue's strength, she still harbored deep doubts about humanity. She acknowledged his power, yet pointed out that for 10,000 years, humans had done nothing but take. They only knew how to destroy, she argued, and for her, seeing would be the only way to believe. Golia made her decision, telling Kalama that he would accompany the stranger back to the petrol. He was to see the truth with his own eyes, to verify if humanity was truly as noble as Nianzue claimed. If they proved trustworthy, Kalama would then guide him toward the forest of death. There, they would seek the path to the Berserk Titan. Meanwhile, back on the ship, Roagia was waiting. She rushed forward, relieved that Nianzue had finally returned, admitting they had all been worried sick. She fussed over him immediately, asking if he was all right or if he had sustained any injuries. Kalama watched this in total silence, stunned to realize these humans were actually worried about a beast. It was a strange sight indeed, seeing them care for a giant creature. Suddenly, the crew spotted the newcomer. They shouted a warning, asking if this massive octopus was an enemy, but Nianzue told them not to worry. He introduced Kalama as his friend and ordered the entire crew to pay attention. The alert was cancelled as they realized he wasn't a threat. After all, any friend of Nianzue's was welcome. The general declared that the beast was now a friend of humanity as well, which was a rather bold claim. He then wondered aloud what an octopus might like to eat, concluding that meat was the obvious choice. They had just hauled in 2,000 tons of tuna, originally intended as a snack for Nianzue. The general turned to their new guest, asking if he would like to have a taste of the catch. Nianzue encouraged him to try some, though Kalama remained deeply skeptical of the gesture. He thought to himself that back in the deep trenches, he usually only ate stonefish. To him, the idea that these humans could buy his loyalty with mere food was utterly laughable. He was Kalama, a proud warrior of the abyss, and he told himself that even if he were facing death, he would rather jump back into the sea than eat a single bite of food provided by humans. We see a moment of pure irony as the crew watches Kalama, who had just sworn he would rather die than touch human food. And yet, there he was, eating every single bite with gusto. He told himself he was merely testing the food for poison. Yes, that was definitely his only motivation. The general then informed Nianzue that the entire world's perspective of him had shifted completely. Aside from a few holdout nations, the vast majority of people now viewed him as their true savior. In fact, numerous smaller countries had already sent representatives to get in touch with the crew. They were desperate to join the Nianzue Protection Project, bringing massive amounts of supplies with them. They were already waiting on the shores of Dragon Country, hoping for just a single glimpse of the great beast. This was the perfect opportunity to show their skeptical guest, Kalama, just how much the world had changed. As they approached the capital, cheers erupted as people realized Nianzue had finally returned to them. Envoys from various nations pleaded for Nianzue's attention, begging him to accept their offerings. They desperately hoped that by providing for him, they might earn his divine protection for their lands. One representative shouted that their entire nation had come together for this purpose. They had managed to gather 3,000 tons of premium bluefin tuna just for Nianzue. Another envoy from a smaller nation stepped forward, offering 5,000 tons of Kobe beef. All they asked in return was for the mighty creature to keep their citizens safe from harm. Kalama watched this scene in utter disbelief, convinced that these humans had all lost their minds. Imagine the sight, humans actually competing with one another to feed a giant beast. What's more, Nianzue looked completely indifferent to the mountain of food being offered to him. Kalamo couldn't help but wonder what was really going on. Surely, this had to be some kind of elaborate act. Kalamo told himself this was all a performance, a clever trap designed to corrupt him with sweet, empty gestures. He was certain they were trying to trick him into becoming a loyal subordinate, a total fantasy, in his opinion. He vowed that he, the great Kalamo, would never yield. But then, he noticed something unexpected. He wondered what on earth he was looking at. There was so much food, and the scents wafting toward him. To be perfectly honest, he had never smelled anything quite like it in his entire life. At that moment, the general signaled to old Zhao, letting him know it was finally his turn to speak. Old Zhao addressed the foreign envoys, explaining that Nianzue was the guardian beast of Dragon Country alone. As such, he would only accept offerings from his own nation and refuse to be fed by any others. However, he noted that Nianzue understood how difficult it was for smaller nations to survive these days. Because of this, Nianzue had specially invited his dearest friend from the 10,000-meter depths of the abyss. He introduced this guest as a powerful warrior of the deep and an ancient noble of the vast oceans. He presented him to the crowd as the esteemed Lord Kalamo. The envoys immediately pivoted, desperately pleading for Lord Kalamo to accept their nation's humble offerings instead. They declared that they were willing to mobilize their entire country's resources just for him. Their only goal was to present him with the highest quality ingredients the world had to offer. They begged for his protection, admitting that while their nations were small, their desperation was very real. They promised that their sincerity was absolute, hoping this would be enough to win his favor. One representative even offered the most prime location along their country's beautiful coastline. They were ready to build an exclusive resting platform for him at a moment's notice. And so, the air was filled with the voices of people practically worshipping him, begging Lord Kalamo to say yes. The envoys continued their desperate pleas, shouting that as a friend of Nianzue, Kalamo was now their friend too. Deep down, Kalamo was stunned, barely able to process that they actually believed the story. He found himself wondering how this was happening and why everything was moving so fast. Old Zhao sighed, remarking that it made sense if Kalamo didn't dare to accept the responsibility. After all, he pointed out that Kalamo couldn't even defeat his own kind back in the abyss. It stood to reason that he would stand no chance against the even more powerful beasts from beyond the heavens. He added that being afraid of death was perfectly normal, and he claimed to understand the feeling completely. The general joined in, mockingly addressing Kalamo as a noble warrior of the deep who surely couldn't be bought. He questioned how a few simple offerings of food could possibly sway someone of his stature. It wouldn't be worth it, he suggested, if Kalamo lost his life because he couldn't handle the coming fight. Kalamo snapped, shouting that he wasn't afraid of death and calling old Zhao a sharp-tongued old man. He turned his glare toward the general, the little traitor, furious that anyone would dare to look down on him. He declared that he was a true warrior of the abyss, and that battle was his ultimate destiny. To him, those beasts from beyond the heavens were nothing more than a minor nuisance, not even worth mentioning. He looked at the representatives of the small nations and announced that he, the great Kalamo, would grant them his protection, a declaration that left the envoys weeping with gratitude. They rejoiced, realizing that their small nations finally had a guardian beast of their own to rely on. The onlookers were in total shock, marveling at how incredibly cool this giant white octopus looked in that moment. Many felt that these small countries were incredibly lucky to have secured such a powerful ally. And to think, it all started with a simple gesture of respect toward the great Nianzue. The crowd couldn't believe it, laughing at the sheer luck of these nations gaining a guardian deity for free. They compared the bickering of the great powers to this display of vision and grace. It was a true masterclass in strategy. This was what real foresight looked like, and once again, the legendary long gun proved to be absolutely incredible. The praises for Boss Gu didn't stop there, as his influence seemed to touch everything around them. And now, even the friends of Boss Gu were beginning to push humanity toward a new path. It seemed humanity was finally going to be saved, which was a very good sign indeed. Another piece had been placed on the board to face the strange beasts from beyond the heavens. Kalamo huffed to himself, noting that he wouldn't be the only one facing these opponents. The envoys cheered at the top of their lungs, shouting long live the great Lord Kalamo. They urged him to take his time eating, promising that there was plenty more where that came from. Kalamo grumbled that they were all on the same side now, though he knew that a full stomach often softened the heart. He corrected himself, thinking that once he was finally full, things would be different. He planned to settle the score with that little traitor later, while the general offered his congratulations to the group. He declared that from this day forward, they were all truly bound together as genuine allies. Seeing the success, other nations approached General Zhao, eager to offer their own highest respects. They, too, were desperate to secure the protection and patronage of a divine beast. Ah, yes, of course, General Zhao. He was exactly the man they needed. They boasted that their own lands were just as rich, promising anything the divine beasts might desire. General Zhao replied that he understood their feelings perfectly, though his tone remained calm and measured. However, he reminded them that a guardian beast is a living soul, not a mere commodity to be traded. He explained that a guardian isn't something you can simply have just because you want it. It requires a certain destiny, a great deal of sincerity, and above all, the right timing. But more than anything, it requires a specific kind of attitude toward the divine. He told them they must understand that true success only comes to those who are genuine. Our friends in the Dragon Kingdom, including Boss Gu himself, have a very specific code. They have never once resorted to taking anything by force, a rare trait in these times. Of course, the final decision didn't rest with the general, nor with the Dragon Kingdom itself. The choice belonged solely to Boss Gu, and the envoys knew they had to return home immediately. They planned to gather every resource their nations possessed, ready to give Boss Gu whatever he desired. Meanwhile, critics watched from afar, calling it a joke that small nations would hand over their fate. They couldn't believe anyone would trust their entire future to the hands of a monster. To them, it looked like the Dragon Kingdom was simply using these creatures to control other nations. It seemed as though a new world order was being built on the backs of giant beasts. They found the idea utterly absurd, considering how vast the world truly is. With oceans so deep and wide, they doubted a single creature like Gallia could do much. The idea that he could protect every continent was, in their eyes, nothing more than a fantasy. We then turned to a secret facility, where a general asked about the progress of their latest project. The scientists reported success, having fused mutated genes from the wasp wolf and dragon turtle with human subjects. At first glance, the test subjects appeared to be remarkably stable. There were, however, a few small side effects, though in their world, that was to be expected. The scientists claimed that if the general injected all the soldiers, they would finally possess a super army that feared no giant beast, no matter how formidable. Their strength, speed, and recovery would far exceed the super soldiers of the Dragon Kingdom. But a voice of reason warned it was too dangerous. What if they lost control completely? The general silenced them, declaring that in wartime, anyone who dared to oppose him was nothing more than a traitor to humanity, a harsh judgment, to be sure. He ordered the injections to begin immediately, already imagining the moment when Jalea would be faced by his new super soldiers and torn into 1,000 bloody pieces. A lovely thought, isn't it? Meanwhile, Bosco realized time was running out and he needed to upgrade quickly. His evolution values were climbing, currently sitting between 110 and 200,000. The Beast Encyclopedia revealed the Zenith Beast, a creature standing 5,000 meters tall. 5,000 meters was a daunting height, and he knew he was still far from that goal. He needed to move faster, recruiting more subordinates to his cause. And just as importantly, he had to increase the strength of the Dragon Kingdom's own soldiers. We see the staff bringing out the ingredients prepared for Bosco. Here they come, they shouted. It seemed Boss G's cooking show was starting again, and good heavens, it was dragon carp. One soldier recalled the smell of the roasted pineapple from last time, claiming he could still taste it. Today, however, Bosco was planning to show off something a bit more elaborate. He decided to start by using Absolute Zero to freeze the ingredients solid. Bosco was showing off his true skills once again, following up with a massive blast of fire to braise the ingredients. The soldiers watching could already smell the incredible aroma wafting through the air. Finally, he moved on to the most critical step for perfecting the texture of the dish. A bit of electric roasting for that perfect char, and to be honest, it looked absolutely delicious. One of them remarked that it was a waste of talent for Bosco not to be a professional chef. And so, it was time for the super soldiers of the Dragon Kingdom to dig in. They were stunned, claiming they had never tasted meat this delicious in their entire lives. One soldier even felt as though he could punch a hole straight through a mountain. It was truly remarkable to see these humans becoming so powerful just by eating Boss G's cooking. He estimated that now, it would only take 5 of these men to go toe-to-toe with a dragon turtle. A terrifying thought for their enemies, surely. What we were witnessing was the birth of a literal army of monsters. They began to awaken all sorts of diverse and powerful abilities right before our eyes. Feeling his own strength increase tenfold, the commander ordered the entire army to stand ready. He called for 100,000 elite soldiers to be organized in batches to bolster the Dragon Kingdom's power. This would undoubtedly take their national strength to the next level, and the soldiers obeyed instantly. The Dragon Kingdom was growing stronger, but deep down, he knew it still wasn't enough. He anticipated that the next move from the heavens would be a direct strike from beyond. That particular opponent would not be easy to deal with, even with their new strength. He realized he needed to find more reinforcements as quickly as possible. Calamo, you look like you're about to melt from all that food. Truly impressive work, Calamo. He told the creature to come over, but Calamu just grumbled, asking what he wanted while he was busy digesting. He demanded to be taken to the Forest of Death to find Titan, which made Calamu ask if he was actually serious. Apparently, Titan had a temper as explosive as a powder keg, not the friendliest neighbor, to be honest. Furthermore, Titan absolutely loathed humans, and Bosco practically reeked of humanity. Calamu warned that going there was just offering himself as a snack, but Bosco didn't care about Titan's hatred. He only knew that in 3 days, something far more terrifying would arrive. It was simple. Either they joined forces now, or everyone would face the end together. Calamo finally agreed to lead the way, though he issued one final, stern warning. that fellow Titan wasn't nearly as easy to talk to as the Mother of the Abyss had been. Turning to his ally, he told Dr. Su to go and quickly prepare the supplies he required. Soon, they reached the edge of the Forest of Death, where Calamu stopped, being a sea creature unable to enter. He told Boss Gu to watch his back and take care of himself as he moved forward. He began to gather his resolve for the trial ahead. Deep down, he knew that becoming a leader to many wasn't the most important thing. But if he didn't want to follow through with this path, or if he wanted to keep his father's legacy aligned with his own, he had to act. He looked around, confirming this was the right direction to find the person he was looking for. He knew he couldn't just find a match and slip away this time. If death was waiting for him, well, he wanted to see if the forest actually had the skill to take him. He looked at his opponent with a calm disdain, asking Titan if this was truly the best he could do. Titan stared back in utter disbelief, unable to comprehend how a mere human was still standing. Bosca noted that the beast seemed panicked, but he assured him that they were only just getting started. Enraged, Titan cursed him, his voice booming with a mixture of hatred and growing frustration. As the creature tried to create distance, Bosca simply asked if he really thought he could run away. Titan roared, demanding to know what this human's ultimate goal actually was. The beast's voice cracked as he revealed that he had already lost his wife to the world's cruelty. He declared that he would not allow his children to be taken from him as well. With a final snarl, he ordered Bosca to get out of his home immediately. He blamed everything on humanity, his resentment for the species clearly running deep. In his mind, it was simple. If it hadn't been for people like Bosco, his wife would still be alive today, a tragedy he wasn't ready to forgive. Bosco cut through the emotion, warning him that a beast from beyond the stars would soon descend. When that happened, everything on Earth would be wiped out in an instant. He pointed out that it wouldn't just be the humans who suffered in the coming apocalypse. Titan's children would face the exact same fate, a cold reality the beast had to face. Titan dismissed it as nonsense, asking why on earth he should trust a word he said. To him, Bosco was just another intruder who reeked of that loathsome human scent. But Bosco wasn't there to negotiate. He was there to state the facts, whether Titan liked them or not. And so, with the power dynamic finally settled, he asked if they could finally have a proper conversation. Bosco made his offer clear. If Titan followed him, he guaranteed they wouldn't just survive. They would, in fact, live very well, a promise that carried significant weight in this dying world. But Titan remained defiant, roaring at the humans, iron birds to get away from him. He demanded they leave at once, his pride still stinging from the confrontation. Bosco then turned to Peng Feng, instructing him to hand over the supplies for their new cooperation. He assured the beast that these resources would be plentiful from now on. Reluctantly, Titan decided to trust him just this once, though he likely had his doubts. A report was soon sent to General Zhao. Goliath had successfully recruited Titan to their cause. We see that this gave them another glimmer of hope, however ridiculous it might have seemed. Meanwhile, far away, a voice mocked the failure of the Beowulf and the Dragon Turtle. It was unthinkable that they were defeated by a mere human and a local reptile. To this mysterious speaker, it was nothing short of a disgrace to their celestial race. He declared there was no need for further discussion on the matter. He vowed that he would personally see to it that both of these individuals were eliminated. His resolve was absolute, fueled by a cold, extraterrestrial hatred. The threat hung in the air, a dark promise of the violence yet to come. He repeated his intent, ensuring his subordinates understood the gravity of his mission. Nothing would stand in his way once he decided to act. He silenced any further debate, his mind fully made up on the destruction of his enemies. In just over 10 days, his kind would fully awaken, and then the real nightmare would begin. He declared that this entire planet, along with that oversized reptile known as Goliath, would soon be reduced to nothing more than cosmic dust. Another voice chimed in, questioning why Lord Benla would even need to step in for a local pest. The subordinate promised to personally twist off Goliath's head as a tribute. The true nightmare was scheduled to arrive tomorrow, or so they claimed. And yet, we see that Goliath was almost looking forward to their arrival, if only to end them. He realized that his ability to fight in high-altitude combat was a glaring weakness. While his atomic breath was undeniably powerful, hitting a fast-moving target in the sky was difficult. To be perfectly honest, his accuracy at those heights was becoming a bit of a problem. He knew he had to acquire the capability for aerial sniping if he wanted to survive. He turned to his allies, telling Bosco that he needed effective anti-aircraft weaponry. Bosco smiled, assuring him that they had already prepared exactly what he was thinking of. He repeated the promise, making sure Goliath knew that the humans were one step ahead. They asked him to leave everything to them, guaranteeing he would be satisfied with the result. The onlookers wondered if he was about to evolve again and what he would consume this time. Since he ate an aircraft carrier last time, some guessed he might swallow a plane or even a satellite. The theories grew wilder, with some suggesting he might head straight into space to end the debate. Suddenly, someone cried out in shock as they recognized the massive Dongfeng missile being brought out. It was a sight so ridiculous that many struggled to believe their own eyes. In fact, the situation had become so absurd that it defied any logical explanation. While others might plan to evolve through simple consumption, our Goliath prefers a more direct approach, a steady diet of missiles. It was an incredibly hardcore strategy, and Boss Gu explained that these were the nation's latest developments. These Shifeng XX missiles came equipped with advanced thermal systems and truly devastating explosive power. They promised these would significantly boost his anti-aircraft capabilities, provided he was willing to swallow them whole. Goliath thought the humans were certainly bold to suggest such a thing, but to be honest, he liked the idea. As he consumed the high explosive energy source, we see his body begin to adapt to the new fuel. He successfully acquired 2 layers of tracking electronic projectile capabilities, a perfect counter for his flying foes. This massive influx of experience allowed him to quickly surpass his lower-level limitations. Meanwhile, high above, the level 7 Thunder Wing Eagle made its grand entrance into the fray. The creature shrieked, declaring that Goliath's time had finally come to an end. The humans cheered, realizing the experiment had worked perfectly, just as they had hoped. They knew Goliath would never let them down, and the crowd couldn't help but shout in awe of his power. The sound of the transformation was deafening, accompanied by visual effects that were, frankly, quite spectacular. Everyone waited to see how those arrogant birdmen in the sky would handle Goliath's new upgrades. The Thunderwing Eagle boasted of being a conqueror of worlds, far superior to any local inhabitant. It looked down upon the humans, calling them nothing more than humble, insignificant spirits. It commanded them to struggle in despair, unaware of the surprise Goliath had prepared. The onlookers pointed toward the sky as the true boss of the enemy fleet finally revealed itself. The entrance animation was undeniably impressive, featuring a bird of truly massive proportions. Some wondered how much meat such a creature provided, imagining a feast of golden wings once Goliath was finished. The crowd wondered if those wings alone were enough to feed the entire city for a night. They were, quite frankly, enormous. Others argued the meat would be too tough, betting that the legs would provide the best chew. A very practical concern, all things considered. High above, the eagle sneered at the humans, calling them foolish, ignorant, and utterly laughable creatures. It mocked them, asking if they truly believed that a mere vomiting frog like Goliath could actually protect them. The beast declared it would twist off Goliath's head first, before dealing with the humans one by one. It promised to tear them into tiny fragments, a threat that sounded as unpleasant as it was dramatic. Goliath, however, seemed entirely unbothered, looking as though he were simply taking a brief rest. The eagle shrieked for them to behold the power of a god as it unleashed a torrent of lightning. The intensity was enough to make any lesser creature crawl in desperation, or so the eagle assumed. But Goliath felt quite comfortable. He had been feeling a bit itchy, and this lightning served as a perfect back-scratcher. It was a nice little warm-up, especially since he had already devoured a superconducting electric coil earlier. Thanks to that, he had gained high-level electrical resistance. To him, this level of lightning was barely a spark. In fact, it felt more like a quick recharge than an attack. He had taken the bird's best shot without flinching. And now, as we see the tide begin to turn, it was finally his turn to respond. Goliath prepared to unleash his new power, and the air around him began to hum with lethal energy. It was a massive burst, a display of force that caught everyone by surprise. These were the tracking projectiles he had just integrated, locking onto their target with terrifying precision. The onlookers were stunned to see Goliath maneuvering his attacks with such tactical finesse. This wasn't just a simple heat ray anymore. These were long-range, high-endurance missiles launched from his own body. The eagle realized too late that it couldn't simply outfly what was coming. Goliath was just getting started. The eagle sneered, asking if Goliath truly thought he had won, calling him nothing more than a lowly reptile. It declared that no matter how powerful he was, it was impossible to resist the might of its entire clan. With a screech, it commanded its subjects to descend and tear the enemy to pieces. We see the battlefield shift as Goliath's allies noted that the eagle wasn't the only one who brought backup. To them, this wasn't a threat. It was simply a delivery of free snacks arriving right at their doorstep. Since Goliath hadn't started eating yet, they decided to help him process the ingredients first. The eagle watched in disbelief, convinced it was impossible for this planet to harbor such things. It wondered, with growing panic, how there could possibly be so many monsters in one place. The crowd began to chant Goliath's name, their voices rising in a rhythmic, thunderous roar. Goliath, Goliath, Goliath. The name echoed across the battlefield like a drumbeat of war. The chanting continued, fueling the atmosphere with an intensity that even the eagle couldn't ignore. It was a chorus of absolute faith in their protector, Goliath. Goliath had promised hand-torn chicken wings, and he was a monster who took his culinary promises very seriously. From its grand entrance to becoming a served dish, this eagle's screen time lasted less than 5 minutes. It turned into a massive buffet scene, proving that traveling 1,000 miles just to lose is a dedicated effort. The gift was heavy, and the sentiment behind it was even heavier, or so one could ironically say. One of the companions grumbled that he hadn't even gotten a bite yet, which was his primary concern. They cheered for Bobo and the great Captain Kai, celebrating their impressive display of power. They expressed their sincere gratitude for the effort and the contribution made to the fight. Goliath looked on as his friend remarked on how enthusiastic these little ones were. And who could blame them, really? Since he needed a place to settle down anyway, it made perfect sense for him to protect this territory. His primary task now was simple: eliminate those pests descending from the sky. The people didn't just treat him like a source of food, they revered him as if he were a living god. They even provided an unconditional, massive buffet for him. An opportunity like this was rare. To be honest, one would be hard-pressed to find such a generous deal anywhere else. The people cried out that the great Titan had chosen them, believing their nation was truly blessed. They called for a national holiday to be declared immediately to mark this divine favor. The plan was to feast for 3 days and nights to celebrate the arrival of the great Shanmei. However, in the shadows of power, others decided that the rise of Goliath and the Titan could not continue. The Dragon Kingdom now possessed both the giant octopus Kalamu and the formidable assistance of the Titan. To their enemies, it seemed as though the balance of power had spiraled completely out of control. They believed they had no choice but to reclaim dominance over the world by any means necessary. According to their intelligence, these strange beasts from beyond the stars weren't just appearing randomly. They were all awakening from ancient seals scattered across the entire globe. And so, a dark realization took hold. If the seals were already breaking, they might as well use them. They decided to let the chaos come even more fiercely than before. Since that small nation was so fond of Titans, they figured they would send them a special gift. It was a gesture of extreme malice, wrapped in the guise of a grand delivery. Their plan was to awaken the ancient entity slumbering deep within the Amazon. They hoped this new terror would ensure that Goliath and the Titan destroyed each other once and for all. And then, they imagined, they would emerge as the saviors to clean up the mess. It was a simple plan: reclaim their rule over the world once the dust had settled. Meanwhile, the people were busy thanking General Zhao and Expert Su, praising the Dragon Kingdom and Lord Goliath. They hailed them as eternal benefactors, pouring out their gratitude for this newfound protection. They credited President He, believing he was the one who had brought this miracle to life. The hope was that by winning this final battle, they could finally escape the shadow of the great beasts. It was time to harvest the fruits of peace once again, or so they desperately hoped. He assured them that everything would be all right, though deep down, the future remained uncertain. We then see Lord Kalamu, the great beast of the Dragon Kingdom, looking quite different than usual. One had to wonder what exactly was happening with him in this moment. After all, this was the same creature who supposedly looked down on human food with utter disdain. But looking at his current manners, or lack thereof, that pride seemed to have vanished entirely. The subordinates thanked President He, their eyes gleaming with a very specific kind of hunger. They realized they could level up again and urged their brothers to eat as fast as possible. It was an impressive sight. In their current state, they were becoming truly formidable. He estimated they could now face monsters on the level of Wugui or lying all on their own. The journey so far had been relatively easy, all things considered. But he knew that as long as they stubbornly kept increasing their strength, they had a chance. He was certain that, in the end, the final victory would belong to them. But then, something shifted. He looked around, wondering what on earth was happening. And then, it happened. Poison. It was a toxic gas. They screamed for everyone to run as the air turned deadly. He ordered everyone to use whatever cloth they had to cover their mouths and noses immediately. The panic was palpable as they scrambled to escape, urging each other to move faster. And then we see the source. Spiders. It was spiders. An endless, swarming tide of spiders began to pour out from every shadow. He couldn't understand how this was happening, or how these monsters could be so overwhelming. Bunxia had broken the seal to release the E-Beast, thinking he was the one in control. The plan was to lead them toward the Dragon Kingdom and Goliath, letting the giants fight it out. But to his horror, he realized they wouldn't even have the chance to retreat. Bowing before the underground terror, they pleaded for mercy, reminding the beast they were the ones who freed it. They offered their total submission, desperate to serve if it meant sparing their lives. The creature looked down at them as nothing more than foolish, insignificant ants. It found the idea that these tiny beings thought they could utilize its power quite amusing. The beast turned its thoughts to Goliath, having studied him through the primitive arts of those same foolish humans. It felt it already understood everything there was to know about the Great Guardian. It acknowledged the power of the atomic breath and that formidable physical shell. But in the beast's eyes, none of that actually mattered. No matter how strong Goliath was, the creature viewed him as nothing more than a mindless animal, and it had no intention of giving him the luxury of a fair, head-on confrontation. The creature mused that its children would use their endless toxins and overwhelming numbers to finish the job. It intended to make him understand the true meaning of despair. On the battlefield, the situation was dire. The poison was spreading too far, and small spiders now blanketed the entire Jade Castle. Goliath realized he couldn't even use his atomic breath, as inhaling would only harm the retreating civilians instead of the enemy. Cries for help rang out as people realized their legs were being consumed by the swarm. To their horror, they discovered the toxic gas could penetrate even their strongest energy shields. The command was given to retreat toward the high ground immediately, urging everyone to move faster. But deep down, he knew that if this continued, no one would make it out alive. These small creatures could burrow through the earth, making them seemingly impossible to exterminate. As the gas seeped into every crevice, he desperately opened the Encyclopedia of Beasts to find a solution. We see the identification, the venomous spider mother. As long as the main body survived, the nightmare would never end. It could produce an infinite number of spiders, and if it were allowed to leave this place, the consequences would be catastrophic. The entire world would be turned into a toxic hellscape, meaning he simply could not afford to retreat. He told himself that the moment he stepped back, everyone here would surely perish. In fact, the safety of the entire world was now hanging in the balance. He realized he had to destroy the main body right here and now, no matter the cost. Meanwhile, the onlookers felt a sense of doom, certain that everyone was already finished. To them, it appeared as though these monsters were fundamentally impossible to kill. As the toxic swarm continued to expand, they wondered where they could possibly run to hide. They felt that death was inevitable sooner or later, and they were watching it happen in real time. The crowd sneered, mocking the supposed guardian of the Dragon Kingdom for being unable to handle a few insects. General Zhao Weigua immediately silenced the doubters, standing firm in his authority. He reminded everyone to trust in Goliath, who, to be fair, had never once let them down before. The loyalists rallied, telling the trolls to get lost because their faith in Boss Gu remained unshaken. They cheered for him, promising that they would always stand by his side, no matter the odds. Amidst the mockery, we are reminded of the true question: who was responsible for releasing this monster in the first place? Goliath heard their voices and saw their hope. For the sake of that trust, he made a silent vow. He told himself that losing here was simply not an option. His companions looked to him, asking what possible plan he could have in such a desperate moment. He realized he had to strike at the very source of the poison to end this nightmare. But the task seemed impossible, as the corrosive nature of the toxins was far too potent for any normal defense. He decided he needed to acquire a natural immunity to the poison, though he wasn't quite sure how yet. His plan was radical. He would devour the poison orbs and inhale the toxic gas directly. He intended to force his own body to adapt to the lethal toxicity through sheer willpower. The suggestion was met with shock, as doing such a thing was essentially an act of suicide. The sheer concentration of toxins would likely destroy his internal organs in a matter of seconds. Therefore, he realized he needed support, a massive quantity of detoxification medicine to counteract the effects. He needed something to sustain his life force at the exact moment he was consuming the poison. He turned to He and issued a direct, urgent command. He ordered the mobilization of every high-potency antidote and life support serum in the Dragon Kingdom's entire inventory. He demanded 10 minutes, only 10 minutes, and insisted they pay whatever price was necessary. He ordered the general to bring everything to that spot, leaving absolutely nothing behind. When the general hesitated, mentioning their reserves, Goliath cut him off, declaring it a supreme command. To some, it seemed like he was gambling with the very future of the Dragon Kingdom. It looked like madness. The world watched in disbelief, wondering if the Dragon Kingdom had truly lost its mind by betting everything on Goliath. But for those who believed, this wasn't madness. It was a final, desperate resolve to burn their bridges and win. He challenged the monster, daring it to show him if its poison was truly stronger than his soul. He pushed himself further, telling himself that the current agony was still not enough to break him. Deep down, he was certain that if the creature wanted to kill him, it would have to try much harder than this. The enemy looked down on him as a mere lower-tier being, mocking the idea that simple willpower could save him. To the monster, his attempt to resist was nothing more than a delusional fantasy. It commanded its offspring to swarm him, intending to drown him completely in their toxic mass. The creature wanted to turn him into nothing more than fertilizer for its own purification, while the crowd cried out for Boss Gu. Fear gripped the onlookers. They were certain that he was going to die, and that there was no way out. They begged for Boss Gu to retreat, unable to bear the sight of the impending catastrophe. The panic was palpable, as everyone felt that his death was now an absolute certainty. The critics sneered that the Dragon Kingdom's greatest joke was finally ending in a self-inflicted tragedy. This, they claimed, was the inevitable price for anyone foolish enough to challenge the mysteries of the world. But then, a shout rang out. The supplies for Boss Gu had finally arrived. It was an absurd sight. The Dragon Kingdom had delivered what looked like millions of tons of medicine all at once. The stakes couldn't be higher. If he were to fall now, the Dragon Kingdom would be utterly finished. A child turned to her mother, crying out that Goliath was suffering right before their very eyes. He was in immense pain, but in the eyes of the people, he was a true hero. They knew, deep down, that he was enduring all of this just to protect them. The skeptics called it a foolish gamble, sneering that he wouldn't be able to hold out much longer. Xiao Xue informed the general with a heavy heart that their entire reserve stock was gone. Every single A-rank medicine they could possibly gather had already been deployed. New supplies were still in production, but we see that time had simply run out. The general didn't hesitate, ordering them to bring out every last detoxifying agent from their own camp. He wanted it all sent to Boss Gu, even when a soldier reminded him of his own injured leg. The general barked that their own lives meant nothing compared to this mission and issued a final command. He told them to execute the order. He would gladly face death if it meant Boss Gu survived. The sentiment spread through the ranks like wildfire. They would all risk everything for his sake. Even the smaller groups joined in, offering what little they had as a sincere gesture of support for Goliath. And then, a new skill manifested, atomic breath. It was a power unlike anything seen before. The crowd gasped in shock. He had actually done it. He had truly succeeded. The toxic mass began to transform, turning into pure essence right before their eyes. The onlookers were stunned, realizing that this was the true, overwhelming power of Boss Gu. Cheers erupted as they realized he had evolved. They knew he had it in him all along. Boss Gu never gives up, embodying the very spirit of the Dragon Kingdom, an impossible feat made real. The onlookers could hardly believe their eyes, wondering how such a feat was even scientifically possible. With a cold, steady gaze, Boss Gu made it clear that it was finally their turn to face the music. He asked them quite simply if they were prepared to meet their end. The enemy shrieked for the return of the children, desperately ordering their subordinates to stop him at any cost. They commanded Zhou Jiang to step forward and tear him to pieces, a tall order, to be sure. But we see Boss Gu unleashing his atomic breath, followed by a devastating great electric blast. He told them to have a taste of their own medicine as the explosion of the new star erupted. A single, desperate cry of no rang out, but it was far too late for regrets. He repeated his question with chilling calm, asking once more if they were ready to die. The self-proclaimed great empress babbled about her supposed happiness, even as her world crumbled. And just like that, it was over. He issued a stern warning to the invaders from beyond the borders to prepare themselves for what was coming. He promised that in 10 days' time, he would find them all. His heart was set on their complete and total annihilation. The air filled with thunderous cheers of "Long live the Dragon Kingdom" as the people found their voices again. They looked at one another in disbelief, realizing that against all odds, they had survived once more. It was a moment of pure, unadulterated joy for everyone watching. This was their true guardian, a protector who found life in the very jaws of death. Rising from the ashes of the disaster, Boss Gu stood tall as their undisputed leader. In their hearts, there was no longer any doubt. He was the true hero they had been waiting for. He offered the meat to them, explaining that his own antitoxin genes had already been infused into the flesh. The poison was neutralized almost instantly, and they felt a sudden, overwhelming surge of strength returning to their bodies. It seemed as though their physical capabilities were evolving, growing even stronger than they were before. Suddenly, one of them pointed toward the distance, spotting the unmistakable military uniforms of the United States. They realized these were indeed American ability users, which led to a chilling realization. It appeared this entire spider disaster had been orchestrated by the United States from the very beginning. The general scoffed, noting that he always suspected an American conspiracy, as they couldn't stand to see the Dragon Kingdom prosper. However, some still clung to denial, claiming it was all a lie designed to ruin the reputation of a great nation. They insisted it was a frame-up, believing their great American father would never stoop to such a thing. Protests broke out among the skeptics, who accused the Dragon Kingdom of trying to sow discord. But the conspiracy was laid bare by ironclad evidence, and from this day forward, everything would change. Boss Gu declared that the United States and its allies would no longer receive any protection from him whatsoever. He left them to their own devices, a death sentence, to be perfectly honest, and they knew they were finished. We see him presenting a glowing object, the core essence he condensed after completing his genetic atomization. By extracting the specific genes within, it could serve as a vaccine to be administered to the entire population. His vision was clear. In 10 days, he expected to see a dragon kingdom where every citizen possessed the strength of a dragon. The officials saluted Boss Gu, promising with absolute certainty that they would not fail his expectations. The general turned to Qing Shue, identifying this as the hope for their future and ordering the immediate mobilization of the country. He commanded the top experts to be gathered, sparing no expense or effort to complete this monumental task. Qing Shue stood firm, guaranteeing Boss Gu that the mission would be accomplished without fail. She assured him that humanity wouldn't simply rely on him alone, as they were determined to push their own evolution forward. Together, they would stand against the apocalyptic beasts as the final 10-day countdown began to tick away. The clock was officially running, and Duoli couldn't help but feel the crushing weight of the situation. 10 days, to be perfectly honest, that felt like no time at all given the scale of the threat. The details he had shared were terrifying, especially the mention of the world-ending beast known as the Funtian. If that creature truly reached a height of 5,000 meters, their current defenses would be utterly meaningless. She looked at Boss Gu, noting that while he had grown to an impressive 500 meters, he was still dwarfed by the enemy. The gap between them was simply too vast, and they only had these 10 short days to bridge it. They realized they had to find a way for him to undergo extreme training to level up instantly, but a problem remained. Where on Earth could such a training ground even exist? Nowhere seemed capable of providing the challenge he needed. What place could possibly allow Boss Gu to achieve such a massive leap in power in just over a week? Suddenly, a voice called out to Duoli, instructing them to head toward the North Sea. The command was clear. They were to seek out the ancient structures hidden within the polar glaciers. They recognized the voice immediately. It belonged to Jormungandr, the legendary guardian of the North Sea. This was the great serpent rumored to possess the all-seeing eye, capable of peering into the past, present, and future. The fact that he was reaching out personally meant he had seen something significant in the timelines. He must have glimpsed a sliver of hope, and Boss Gu knew this was an opportunity they couldn't ignore. Convinced the serpent held the key to his evolution, he gave the order for them to set out immediately. And so, our heroes began their urgent journey toward the frozen reaches of the North Sea. Upon their arrival, a deep voice resonated through the ice. "You have finally come, Golia." The voice explained that he had seen every possible future, including the total destruction of the Earth. He had witnessed the end of all living things, and to be honest, he believed everything was already set in stone. That was until Golia appeared, a presence whose sheer will changed everything. His arrival caused the established fate of the world to shift, even though the serpent had originally intended to simply sleep alongside the glaciers and allow the world to reach its inevitable end. However, as we see now, he had been watching the trajectory of Golia's growth very closely. In that growth, he glimpsed a tiny sliver of a new possibility for their survival. Because of this, he was willing to help, though Golia wondered how he could possibly gain enough power in 10 days to match the strength of the Funtian beast that threatened them all. The serpent began to explain the history of the first weapons used by the beasts from beyond the stars. Our world's own guardian beasts rose up to resist the invasion, but the cost was devastating. Most of them perished in the conflict, leaving behind a vast sea of fallen remains. Their bodies were left just like this, frozen in time and buried deep beneath the ice. Scattered across every corner of the globe, these remains held the key. Golia had to devour them. By doing so, he would inherit their will and their power, but the local beasts weren't the only source. Even the corpses of the alien beasts that fell in battle could serve as fuel for his evolution. The serpent urged him to go forth, noting that this was their very last chance at survival. Golia understood his mission clearly, feeling a deep resolve that this time, he would truly change their fate. Suddenly, a sharp chime echoed as the system interface flickered back to life before him. It detected that the host was consuming a giant bone beast, absorbing a massive surge of raw energy. The absorption process began immediately, the energy coursing through him with a sharp chime. His evolution points surged by 50,000, a massive gain, and certainly a welcome one. The system offered its congratulations as Golia secured a staggering amount of evolutionary value. This was the true power of an ancient, native giant beast from the dawn of time. The purification it provided was far more potent than anything gained from devouring those alien beasts. His level reached the peak of rank 8, standing right on the threshold of level 9. If he continued like this, devouring enough remains of these ancient titans, facing the 5,000-meter Funtian beast within 10 days would no longer be impossible. Golia listened as the serpent spoke of a specific location he knew well. Deep beneath the permafrost of Siberia, the remains of a massive mammoth beast lay buried. Others chimed in, mentioning rumors of the deep, untamed reaches of the Amazon. Legends spoke of a golden lake hidden away from the eyes of the world. Something powerful seemed to be suppressed beneath the earth there, though details were scarce. Deep within the Great Rift Valley of the African continent, an incredibly ancient aura could be felt lingering in the air. The exact coordinates were unknown, but Golia wasn't worried in the slightest. When it comes to hunting for treasure, there is one race far more skilled than any other. Across the nation, the message went out to every citizen and soldier. News had arrived from Golia. A method had been found to allow Golia to grow exponentially stronger in just 10 days. The mission was clear. They had to find and recover all the remains scattered across the Dragon Kingdom. The search wasn't limited to their borders. It extended to the remains of ancient giants across the entire globe. These were no longer just relics of the past, but a precious heritage and our only hope for a counterattack. And so, the official announcement was made. The Dragon Hunt project was now formally underway. Every citizen and every soldier was mobilized, called upon to join this desperate search. They were told to look at any area tied to ancient myths or places where geological anomalies had occurred. Reports flooded in immediately, all for the sake of Golia and the Dragon Kingdom, even from people's own backyards. One citizen claimed their local legends spoke of a dragon, insisting they had to help however they could. Indeed, the sentiment was shared by all. They had seen the broadcast and were determined to support Golia. Golia knew their struggles, and the people felt a deep connection to their young leader's cause. As the Dragon Kingdom launched the project, the scale of the mobilization was truly unprecedented. They requested that the entire world share information regarding any giant beast remains they might be hiding. In other corners of the world, leaders panicked, wondering how the Dragon Kingdom had learned of the secrets beneath their islands. It was true that ancient remains were sealed there, but unearthing them carried a terrifying price. If they dug them up, their islands would sink into the ocean, a risk they were absolutely unwilling to take. Orders were barked to lock down all information. No one was to know the truth of what lay beneath. These remains were a secret the White House had kept hidden for centuries, tucked away from public eyes. However, a lone voice spoke up, apologizing to the director with a heavy heart. His conscience simply wouldn't allow him to keep the secret any longer, not when the world was at stake. Even if revealing the truth meant the destruction of their symbolic monuments, he felt he had no choice. To him, it was clear that the survival of the Earth was far more important than any single nation's pride. If it weren't for these righteous individuals speaking out, one wonders how much longer they intended to hide the truth. The demand from the public was clear: hand over the giant beast remains immediately and deliver them to Golia. To refuse now would be nothing less than declaring themselves enemies of the entire human race. With only a few days left before the end of the world, such selfishness seemed, to be honest, utterly shameless. Watching these high-level officials cling to their secrets, many citizens felt a growing sense of righteous fury. The cry echoed across the globe: hand over the remains at once. The director looked at his subordinate, feeling that the young man had utterly betrayed his country's interests. But in reality, no amount of petty political maneuvering could block the path of what was coming. Under the immense pressure of global public opinion, even the most powerful nations were forced to grant access. Excavation rights were finally secured, turning this into a truly worldwide treasure hunt. And so, at long last, the real work began. We see a student turning to Senior Chin, pointing in awe at a discovery that defied all logic. It was the skull of the legendary Fenrir. Incredibly, a single eye socket was the size of half a football field. The zoo director, having spent his life around animals, stood there in a state of complete disbelief. He never imagined his facility would one day house the physical evidence of Earth's hidden evolutionary history. A little later, an assistant informed the director that the final shipment of remains had finally arrived. He asked himself if this was truly what humanity could achieve when working toward a single goal. It seemed that when conflict is set aside, the collective energy of mankind is something even the gods might fear. Voices of support rose up for Golia, with many cheering for their leader to succeed in the coming battle. They looked back on their past quarrels over territory and resources, realizing how small those disputes truly were. Now, the question was no longer about the exhaustion of living, but simply about staying alive. We see Golia beginning to move, and we realize this is the true weight of the moment. Was this the power of the ancestors, those who had sacrificed everything to protect this planet? Though they had fallen in different corners of the world long ago, they seemed to have gathered here once again for one final stand. Lin Shu felt it then, their iron will and their simmering fury. He realized that their profound love for this land was now his to carry. Golia, the guardian of the earth, accepted that legacy in its entirety. He was determined to tear those extraterrestrial invaders to pieces, refusing to let them stay. His goal was simple: to bury every last one of them far beyond the stars. Look there, the creature is growing, and its energy fluctuations have already shattered every limit that human technology was ever capable of monitoring. It was still in the process of reshaping its physical form, a sight both terrifying and majestic. Systems everywhere began detecting a massive surge in experience points. In an instant, the level had already reached 50. Then came the sound of the seal nodes collapsing, signaling the countdown for the alien invasion. 3, 2, 1, 0. The announcement echoed across the globe. The seal holding back the beasts had been broken. What now? The invaders seemed to ask as they finally returned to our world. They stood before the great Lord Funtion, ready to reclaim what they believed was theirs. One of the invaders steps forward, demanding that Golia, the self-proclaimed guardian of the Dragon Kingdom, be handed over to him. He wants to crush Golia's spine with his own hands, a charming sentiment, to be sure. Lord Funtion dismisses them with a wave, telling his followers to move out. He tells them to go and enjoy the many pleasures this planet has to offer. Deep down, he feels that if he were to intervene personally, this little game would become far too boring for his taste. Panic erupts instantly as people scream for their lives, begging the monsters to stay away. Desperate cries for a savior echo through the streets, but no one seems to answer. The invaders sneer, calling humans lowly creatures and demanding they kneel to become nutrients. They're surprised to see that some aren't running, wondering if these slaves really think they can stop them. The monsters boast that they could crush 10,000 humans with a single strike. They charge forward to slaughter everyone, but suddenly, the tide begins to turn. We see the defenders standing their ground, having grown quite impatient while waiting for this moment. The invaders are stunned, unable to believe that humans could possess such overwhelming power. It turns out the G20 vaccines refined from various sources were more than just medicine. They truly were the final shield of human civilization, and perhaps something even greater. This was the very manifestation of the Earth's will, and from this moment on, It could be said that the Dragon Kingdom no longer harbored any weaklings. The entire nation had become a literal army, as General Zhao observed with a sense of grim pride. And this transformation was only possible thanks to the Dragon Kingdom's selfless sharing of their technology. We see that our soldiers have also awakened extraordinary abilities of their own. They are currently delivering a crushing blow to those scoundrels, proving that the cooperation with the Dragon Kingdom was the best decision they ever made. Now, even an ordinary citizen can hold their ground against a beast. They offer their thanks to the Dragon Kingdom, expressing gratitude for everything as they shout for the invaders to bring it on. They are ready to fight to the very end, no matter the cost. To be honest, the scene is nothing short of incredible. The invaders can't fathom how humans could possibly evolve to this level in just a few days. We look toward the Dragon Kingdom, where the situation is even more intense. Those wild warriors are acting like absolute madmen in the heat of battle. They remark on how pure the spiritual energy in these monsters' cores feels. They encourage each other to consume more, hoping to level up once again very soon. A real man, they tell themselves, naturally knows how to take what he needs. The invaders watch in horror as these two humans actually treat their divine race as nothing more than ingredients for a barbecue. The enemy leaders scoff, claiming those small monsters were just cannon fodder and that humans are delusional. The command is issued for all high-ranking chiefs to join the battle personally. They intend to show the world exactly what they are dealing with. They wonder if these humans can truly handle such massive, towering creatures, referring to the native mutated beasts that have now joined the fray. The invaders sneer at the beasts, calling them fallen creatures for their betrayal. They find it laughable that these monsters would choose to protect mere humans. They mockingly ask if this ragtag group truly thinks they can withstand their full power. But the great beasts stand firm, declaring that the creatures of Earth will not be trampled. Today, they have decided to stand or fall alongside humanity. It is a matter of life and death, and they have made their choice. The enemy leader tries a different tactic, suggesting to Titan that they should talk. He proposes that they could simply share this planet instead of fighting over it. Our human warriors see Titan clearing the path and urge their brothers to charge forward. The enemy scoffs at Jormungand, calling the creature a fool for its loyalty. They warn that standing by Goliath's side will lead to nothing but a swift death. The commander demands to know Goliath's exact location immediately. He claims that in the future he envisioned, this was supposed to be the end. He was certain that your death was destined to happen at this very moment. He demands to know what could possibly change that fate. He wonders if they are relying on those divine turtles, whom he views as mere ants. He prepares to strike, but suddenly, he pauses in utter confusion. He looks around frantically, wondering who could have possibly intervened. He screams out, demanding to know who killed Ben Lang so effortlessly. Finally, he loses his patience and bellows for Goliath to come out and face him. The commander views Goliath's silence as a direct provocation, a challenge he cannot ignore. And so, facing the might of the Dragon Kingdom, the order is finally given. He commands every anti-aircraft missile to fire and orders 3 squads of super soldiers to mobilize. They are told to stop him at any cost, but deep down, they know their snipers are useless here. It is a pity, really, as the displays show his life force is far beyond anything they expected. His energy readings have exceeded the upper limits of human calculation, reaching 5,000 meters. This is no longer a mere biological creature. It is a living nightmare for those who came before. The enemy scoffs, claiming this is the true extent of human power. To him, they are as weak as old sheep, and he demands once more to know where Goliath is hiding. He bellows for him to crawl out and face his judgment. The commander vows that atop the ruins of this very city, he will have his victory. He intends to crush Goliath's spine inch by inch, grinding it into nothing but dust. He screams into the void, asking Goliath where he could possibly be hiding. Since he refuses to show himself, the commander decides that he and this entire land shall be turned into nothing more than a pile of smoldering ash. But suddenly, something shifts, leaving the commander wondering what is happening. A voice echoes, asking whose bones he plans to crush, as the energy spikes to 5,000 meters. He stammers in disbelief, unable to comprehend how a life force could evolve so rapidly. And here, we see that our savior has finally returned to us. He has succeeded, bringing back with him the collective will of the entire earth. Winking, he tells her, he has returned from the very depths of hell. With tears in our eyes, we see that Goliath has truly grown to 5,000 meters, the disaster we raised ourselves. He is no longer just a monster. He is protecting the cold kingdom and the earth itself. In this moment, there is only one certainty. Goliath must be victorious. Shally corrects himself, realizing he can no longer call him a mere pet. This is Goliath. He wants to show these foreign scum what they are up against and feed their broken bones to the fish. The invader sneers, unable to believe a mere native creature dares to think it is his equal. He claims to be a world devourer, viewing all living things as nothing more than fuel for his fire. He believes that for humans, reaching the edge of the heavens is an impossible dream. He demands that everything bow before his eternal will. And here we see the stats of our Titan, Goliath, now standing at level 50. Standing 5,000 meters tall and weighing 6,000 tons, he looks down upon his children. His power level hits 99 million, a sight that leaves Winting completely breathless. Goliath decides it is time to let this intruder feel the true meaning of terror. The very essence of the universe seems to be swallowed up by his presence. The commander panics, feeling his North Origin power draining away, a thing he thought impossible. All living beings are destined to witness this moment of absolute power. He realizes that against such a wound, a sneak attack would be utterly useless. With a silent challenge, Goliath beckons him to come and try his luck. The commander screams like a cornered animal, begging the Titan to let him go. Goliath makes his intentions clear. He wants this intruder to face his end in the cold vacuum of space. The ground below is simply too narrow and, frankly, far too cluttered with corpses for a battle of this scale. The heavens above, however, provide the perfect burial ground for a creature of such arrogance. We see that he is intentionally leading the battlefield into the high atmosphere to prevent the shockwaves of the fight from completely destroying the coastline. Winting watches in awe, wondering if Goliath can truly win this. The monster's flames are so intense, they have begun to turn the very sky a deep, bruised red. And yet, Goliath's cellular activity is climbing at an exponential rate, defying every known law of biology. It becomes clear to everyone watching that he isn't just fighting, he is hunting. Goliath mocks his foe, telling him that his defenses are as fragile as paper before his might. Struck by the crescent moon attack, he achieves a perfect 100% energy conversion rate. His atomic core surges, reinforcing his defenses to an impenetrable level. He even offers a bit of dry thanks, noting that the invader's fire actually tastes quite good. The commander is left in utter disbelief, unable to comprehend what he is witnessing. With every passing second, the Titan's strength and speed continue to grow even more formidable. With a massive strike, Goliath sends the intruder flying through the air like a discarded toy. Yuanzhang points out with excitement that their protector has finally gained the upper hand. Shaoli beams with pride, reminding everyone that this is the cub he raised with his own hands. The invader trembles, refusing to believe that a mere guardian of this land could possess such power. He screams that he is a hegemon who has devoured 17 entire planets during his reign. He cannot accept the reality of being suppressed by a creature he considers so vastly inferior. Goliath points out the fundamental difference. While the invader merely devours life, he carries the weight and the hopes of his entire homeland on his shoulders. We see that the nuclear fusion reaction within his body has finally surged past all known physical limits. It is a breathtaking moment. He is on the very verge of a new evolution. Orders are immediately issued for every satellite to adjust their orbits and focus their lenses. The goal is simple: to ensure the entire world can witness what is about to happen. They want everyone to see exactly how the god of Longwa slays this so-called tail god. With the power of the Iron Cavalry, he prepares to deliver the final, decisive blow. He tells his foe quite plainly that it is time for his journey to end. Desperate, the invader offers a deal, promising to share half of the planet's energy. He even suggests that the two of them could rule this entire galaxy as equals. Goliath, however, makes it clear that he has absolutely no interest in ruling anything. To be honest, he is far more interested in the experience the monster's essence provides. The invader can only stammer in disbelief, convinced that what he is seeing is impossible. The sheer scale of the energy fluctuations coming from Goliath is beyond his comprehension. He realizes too late that this isn't just a simple execution, it's a total overwhelming of his power. Goliath decides that his enemy doesn't actually need to understand the details of his own demise. And just like that, the battle is decided. Goliath has emerged victorious. We see the massive, ghostly creature finally plummeting from the sky like a fallen star. Shaoli can't help but cheer for his boy, proud of the incredible feat he just witnessed. Shaoli exclaims that he knew all along Goliath was the lucky star of their nation, Longwa. Across the world, people begin to wonder if the apocalypse is finally over and if they have truly survived. We see them pointing toward the horizon, noting that Goliath is still there, standing guard over them all. A heavy silence falls as everyone asks themselves the same question: is it finally over? The enemy forces are in total shock, unable to believe that their leader, Honda, has actually been killed. Panic quickly sets in among the invaders, and the only thought left in their minds is to escape. The human commanders seize the moment, immediately issuing orders for a global counterattack. They intend to take advantage of the enemy's broken morale and drive these beasts off the earth for good. With tears of relief, the young survivors turn to Sister Sue, celebrating the fact that they have won. Deep down, they all know that Goliath has truly performed a miracle for humanity. However, Wuji notices something unsettling. It seems this monster isn't quite dead yet. He calls out to his companion, the Ghost Immortal, sensing a lingering presence from the fallen foe. The energy begins to shift again, as if some hidden force is trying to overcome the laws of physics. To be honest, the logic behind what is happening defies any known scientific theory. Strange, primal sounds echo through the air as a new, even larger shadow begins to loom over them. Someone points toward the sky, trembling as they ask what that massive object could possibly be. Imagine the terror of realizing that an entire planet is currently hurtling directly toward our world. The planetary sensors flare to life, desperately updating their data as the celestial body approaches. As a rogue planet descends upon them, the global defense systems automatically trigger a Level 2 emergency. The warning sirens blare across the globe, detecting what can only be described as a myth-grade threat. We see a planet-sized vessel descending, carrying a Titan Python measuring 5,000 meters in length. Beside it, deep space projectiles 8,000 meters long appear, followed by a moondragon spanning 12,000 meters. Goliath scoffs, realizing that this time, they might truly be backed into a desperate corner. But deep down, he has no intention of giving up just yet. He decides to use high-concentration super-energy substances, forcing the system to break past its upper limits. And so, the evolution begins. His current win rate is a mere 5%, even though his power has clearly increased. It seems he must consume even more to survive this encounter. He tells his companion to step back and let him handle the fighting. He promises to provide enough food for 10 lifetimes, which, to be honest, sounds like a bit of an exaggeration. He looks at the group before him, calling them his strongest team of chefs. With a determined look, he declares that it is time to start the feast. His companion watches in awe, realizing there is still more to come. The survivors can only stammer in disbelief as they watch him. They find themselves unable to form words at the sheer scale of his ambition. The shock is so great that even the bravest among them can only stutter. They look at one another, their voices failing them in this moment of crisis. It is a scene of pure, unadulterated tension as they wait for his next move. And who could blame them, really, given the impossible odds they now face?